This conference will now be recorded.
So we're up and running. Mark, can you hear me?
Yeah, Steve, I can hear you, but I don't think I can hear anything in the chambers.
Yeah, I can't hear any, so I don't know if on my computer, it just said the session is now being recorded, so I don't know what's going on yet.
Yeah, the camera on that's focused on the chambers, it's not like a red microphone muted, but looks like a little speaker icon with an X through it, which is a little
And
different.
it's pretty far away. I can't tell who's there. So I can see you, I can see.
And it's already recording. Perfect.
There we go. Now I can hear the chambers.
Some people.
All right, we're ready.
Did I hear you say we're ready?
That's what I heard.
You have to turn Steve up. You really have to turn the volume up on the computer. Yeah.
This way?
Mm-hmm. Can you say it again, Steve? See if we can hear you.
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay, we're ready here at City Hall if you want to start the meeting.
Okay, so I call to order the Escalon Planning Commission meeting January 12th, 2021. I guess we'll stand for a virtual flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag
Like
of the United
United
States of
States
America
of America,
and to the
to
republic
the republic for
which
which
stands
stands
one
nation
under God, indivisible,
indivisible,
with liberty
and
and
justice
justice for all. That sounds good coming off the microphone. May I have a roll call, please?
Commission Chair Castellanos,
Yes.
Vice Chair Willis. Here. Mark Sarkozy,
here.
Sean Stroman,
Here.
Current Danziger. Absent. Okay, and also on the line, on the computer, we have Mark Velasquez. I just want to introduce him. Our previous city attorney, Ann Saprell, is getting ready to retire. So we have a new city attorney, Mark Velasquez. So he's here on the line, and we're just introducing him because we haven't met him before.
Hello. Thank you.
I guess a special note, all cell phones, pagers, and similar devices need to be set on silent or vibrate mode or turned off unless you're an on-duty emergency responder. I don't have to read the rest of this stuff, do I?
No.
Okay, so we can go right into the consent calendar and look at the minutes for the December 15th, 2020 meeting. Any comments, corrections?
I'll make a motion that we approve the minutes from the December 15th meeting.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. See, we'll open up, we have a public hearing. We're considering 4 different applications. The first application, let me get to that page, is application 2735, a conditional use permit. This property is located on 1415 Oklahoma Avenue. Could I have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Commission Chair. Let me get to our picture. They're right there. Okay. All right, thank you. Before us tonight is a conditional use permit for 1415 Oklahoma Avenue. In 1967, a 1,300 square foot dental office and its associated parking lot was constructed on this lot. Sometime after that, the property went into non-conforming status. This could be because of amendments to the zoning code or due to rezoning of the property at some point. It's unclear from city records exactly when it became non-conforming, but the city was able to confirm that it was constructed in 1967 as a dentist office. And that dentist office closed operations approximately June of 2020, and the building has been sitting vacant since. The applicant, as part of this project, is proposing to create a mixed-use residential commercial project. They'll do this by converting the rear 750 square feet of the office into a 2-bedroom, 1-bath, single-family residential unit. The front 550-ish square feet of that office will remain a professional, business, or medical office. North of the building towards Rosina, the applicant is proposing an accessory dwelling unit, and both of the residential units would utilize a proposed parking lot located off of Rosina. This parking lot would accommodate 4 uncovered parking spaces. In reviewing the Escalon general plan and the municipal code, mixed-use projects occur in commercial zones. For example, there's 2 parcels down on Main Street that have a mixed residential commercial use. One is a vertical mixed use where it's commercial on the bottom floor, and the 2nd story of the building is a residential apartment. And the other is located in Lear Village, the planned development, where the commercial office fronts Main Street with residential units in the back. The general plan and municipal code do not provide development direction for commercial uses in residential zones, and that's because commercial is typically not allowed in residential zones. So for example, current code does not allow medical, business, and professional offices in the R1 zone. The reason the dental office was allowed to stay is because it was in non-conforming status. It existed continuously until they closed operations in 2020. The municipal code section on non-conforming uses states, when a non-conforming use of a building has ceased for 6 months, such building shall not again be put to non-conforming use. So since the building has been vacant for at least 6 months, the non-conforming office status has expired, and the use of the property reverted to single-family residential as it's currently zoned. So the Planning Commission can deny the conditional use permit. The property remains single-family residential. The building and the site would be required to be converted to residential house before occupancy would be granted. Or Planning Commission can approve the conditional use as requested to allow mixed use on a residential lot. This would allow a business, professional, or medical office to continue at that spot. And it would allow the creation of a primary residential dwelling unit and a detached accessory dwelling unit. If Planning Commission wants to approve the conditional use permit, it must meet the findings for use permits listed out below. Appropriate public outreach was conducted. A public hearing notice appeared in the newspaper on December 30th, and the same public notice was mailed to every property owner and occupant within 300 feet of the site. Staff did not receive any inquiries as a result of the public hearing notice. Planning Commission decision tonight begins a 10 business day appeal period, which expires on January 27th. Staff recommends the property remain single-family residential in accordance with the municipal code. Staff does not recommend mixed use in the residential zone, as the general plan and municipal code only encourage it in the commercial zone. Procedures, Planning Commission shall open the public hearing and take public testimony on this project, close the public hearing. If Planning Commission wants to approve the application, they would make the findings as required for section 1756 for use permits, find the project CEQA exempt and authorize staff to file the notice of exemption, and approve the application with conditions of approval as proposed below or modified by the Planning Commission. And I just wanted to go over the specific conditions, 1, 2, and 3. If this application is approved, it is approval to allow the business, professional, or medical office to continue, to convert part of that office to a single-family primary residential unit, and add a 663 square foot accessory dwelling unit on the property. All front and side yard areas visible from the street shall be landscaped. As you can see from the pictures, there's quite a bit of visible property on the Rosina side that's not landscaped, so that would be required to be landscaped in accordance with city municipal code and state and well requirements. And parking, the applicant was proposing 4 uncovered parking spaces. The municipal code requires that the primary dwelling have 2 covered parking spaces. So a condition has been included that 2 spaces be covered. The covered parking structure will have to meet municipal code requirements, which in the current location right off of Rosina would not fit. It's too close for setbacks. So the applicant would have to adjust their site plan to provide 2 covered parking spaces, and that structure meets setbacks requirements. And then the commercial parking lot off of Oklahoma needs to be restriped and updated to ADA compliance. Planning Commission has any questions? Staff is available. The applicant is also on the go-to meeting if you have any questions for them.
Does any of the commissioner have a question for staff?
I have one. How far back does the parking have to the south? Does it have to be added to or augmented to get the code?
Accessory structures will be 15 feet.
And it's what now?
There's no accessory structure right now.
I heard a lot of noise.
What's that? Does your microphone work? It should, yeah. Was there a question? What was the question?
Yep, Barb, we could barely understood it. Could you repeat that? Barbara, can you hear me?
What, Barbara?
Well, something's gone glitched again.
Yeah, they've gone silent again.
Yeah. Could you understand Barbara's answer, Mark?
No, I think she was asking something about maybe a parking setback, but that's
Yeah, it
as
was
much as
really
I got.
hard. I heard whistling and everything else. I think they're trying to fix it again.
There we go.
Okay.
Okay, you should hear us now.
Okay, Barbara, could you repeat your question?
I was concerned, Diana had mentioned that the parking allowance there off of Rosina was not big enough, the setback had to be farther to the south, and I wondered how much was depicted in the diagram. So how many more feet had to be added?
And this line where the mouse is going right now is the 15-foot setback. So the covered parking structure would have to be further up on the property behind this line.
Okay. Mark or Sean, do you have questions for staff?
I do, Chair. So my first question is, I noticed that there is a proposed accessory dwelling unit of approximately 665 square feet. But in the packet, I don't see any sort of renderings or anything as to what is planned for the ADU. Do we have any additional information on that?
We did not receive an elevation of what that ADU will look like.
Okay. And my second question is, you mentioned that they will have to do upgrades to ADA. And what is the justification for that?
Under a conditional use permit, the planning commission can impose conditions that improve the property. And so allowing a non-conforming use to be started again, you would be able to have the parking lot striped and brought to ADA compliance.
But if the majority, so at least my interpretation is that, and Mr. Velasquez can talk about this a little bit further, but it's been my interpretation that ADA accessible stalls are based off of occupancy loads. And what we're doing is, there's one little office suite that we're talking about here. The majority of the occupancy is going to be residential use. And so why are we trying to enforce an ADA accessible code requirement when the majority of the occupancy load is primarily residential, and residential is exempt from ADA?
So for commercial, it's one ADA parking stall van accessible for every 25 parking spaces. So it is a small commercial parking lot, and they would be required to have one ADA parking space van accessible with an ADA path of travel from the sidewalk to the office.
So where would the ADA stall be, or where is the parking lot for this building currently on the screen in front of us?
This is the existing parking lot. So this is Oklahoma over here on the right,
Okay,
and they pull in off of Oklahoma. Here is the parking lot.
so what would be the ADA path of travel?
Wherever their architect says it needs to be. The city doesn't design ADA compliance for them. Their architect would design it.
So the applicant did not provide any sort of site plan that shows the ADA parking stall or anything like that?
It's a preliminary concept. When they submit actual construction drawings, it would include ADA compliance, which would be reviewed by the city engineer and or the building department.
I think it does note there at the bottom, that's an existing sidewalk and ramp. So I would assume their ADA pathway is going to be close in that area.
The ramp is actually on the other side. On the north side of the office suite, there's a ramp over the steps, and on the south side, it's just steps.
So they'll have some adjustment to do then.
I guess my concern is that, and this is, me just I think if we're enforcing an ADA path of travel and ADA parking stalls, et cetera, I don't know the existing slopes, but anytime you start getting into ADA improvements, you start opening up a whole can of worms that can take a small project like this and extend it out by leaps and bounds to try to enforce ADA compliance. That's all. So those are my thoughts.
Any other comments from the commissioners?
No,
Well, I have one. I want to find out that this property is zoned residential. Is it possible as a residential property to convert the existing office into 2 dwelling units and also construct an AUD unit on that property?
Under current state law, yes, that is possible to have 3 units on the property. You would have a primary dwelling unit, and then you would have an accessory dwelling unit. And then you are allowed to build a junior accessory dwelling unit, which has to be inside the primary dwelling unit. So if the entire existing office was converted to a primary unit and a junior unit, and then you would have the separate accessory dwelling unit. The only thing when you have the junior unit is you have an owner occupancy requirement. So the owners of the property would have to live in one of the 3 units.
Okay.
So I just have one last question for staff. So just so I get my bearings right, if we're looking at the very first photo on exhibit D, the dog, what side, I'm trying to figure out how that corresponds with exhibit C. So is the left side,
This first picture that's up on the screen, if you're standing on Oklahoma, looking through the parking lot towards the building.
so then jump back to exhibit C.
Is the C.
I'm sorry, that's right there. So,
That's the front of the building here.
okay, so then go back to D. See the steps on the left-hand side?
Mhm.
Those steps are not ADA compliant. So now what they will have to do is they will have to do major ADA upgrades on the left-hand side if we're going to enforce it.
Well, there is a ramp on the other.
There's a ramp on the other side, on this right side. The north side has a ramp.
Okay, so according to this plan on exhibit C, they want to build a private deck, right? So,
Yes, they might have to make modifications to their plan to meet ADA compliance.
that's it, Chair.
Any other questions? Okay, I'll open up the public hearing, and if anybody wants to speak either in favor of or against this project, please state your name and address, and yeah, look at this point, state your name and address, and anybody like to speak in favor of this project? No one wants to speak in favor of this project?
Just a minute.
Hello? Hello? I can't, I'm not.
I can't hear anything now.
Can you hear us okay?
Yes,
There we go.
I'm hearing an
It's a
echo.
little bit better. So just to clarify on the get all this feedback. Just to clarify on the ADA requirement.
Whoever's speaking, please state your name.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Thank you, and your address.
David Lear, 1977 St. John Road, Escalon, California, 95320.
Okay, thank you.
So on the ADA requirement, we're getting a ton of feedback. We're like my dad and I are over here looking at the
you
plan.
need to turn on your computer that you're on also.
Okay.
Tammy, this is Kurt. Can you hear me?
We can't, Kurt.
Okay, I was having problems checking in, so I've been listening, but I haven't been able to contact anybody.
We can hear you now.
All right, thank you.
Uh-huh.
Okay, can you hear us okay again?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so with regards to the ADA requirement, typically to upgrade, let's say one or two of the parking stalls, you typically take two and then put the handicap sign out, et cetera, et cetera. But is this going to include path of travel and then also include upgrades to the actual building itself? Because those are two separate things. So civil would cover parking lot, building code would cover the actual office itself. So just checking to see if the city's requiring that the office itself, and maybe its entirety is what's being said here, I'm not sure, it needs to be upgraded to ADA requirement for the entire existing office. Is that what the staff is recommending or saying?
For the office, you would have the 20% rule. So your total cost of upgrades to the office, the 20% has to be dedicated to ADA.
Well, you got path of travel.
So you have to put a handicap bathroom in.
Got handicap bathroom, and then what about the doorways in the offices?
I think they're all 3 foot.
Okay.
We're okay.
So you're okay on the ramp?
So
then? The handicap ramp?
Yeah, like you said, there's already one there, but I was going to plan on putting one in anyway.
Okay.
On the left side.
You know, they had all the lawsuits that happened here in the valley, you know, and so many people are getting sued. It's why the Barnwood got put out of business. I mean, everybody almost knows that, I think, but you almost want to do it for liability. And of course, it makes sense to enhance the property if you can and provide accessibility for people with disabilities. I mean, there's a reason why those laws are in place, and we understand that. But of course, like anything, it comes down to cost. But this is a real small office, and I think our thoughts going in were, it's been an office for 30 or 40 years. It's been a dental office. He was actually using it as a wellness center of some kind, I think, the last 2 years. And it's a commercial parking lot, really, right next door to kind of a
it's a doctor's office.
Doctor's office or whatever. So we thought the use made sense on Oklahoma, and we had proposed providing the parking for the residential structure off of Rosina. So it's actually separate access, and that you don't have both commercial parking and residential parking being in the same parking lot. At least that's how we had envisioned or planned it, and as we were moving forward with it. And the ADU doesn't necessarily need to be 663 square feet. We were just proposing the largest it could be within the setbacks, just so we at least had proposal if we decided to go that big. But anyhow, just to clarify a few points.
Any questions from the applicant?
So David, this is Sean Stroman.
Yes.
Do you have a tenant lined up for the office suite yet, or what are you?
You know, we were actually going to move into that office. You know, the small office on Main Street, it's 850 square feet. It's kind of set up more like a gallery office or just like a real, I don't know. It's sorry, that's my mom in the background. She has Alzheimer's, so she's talking a little bit. But anyways, yeah, she's talking a lot right now. Yeah, so this was going to be an additional office for construction or planning in addition to our Main Street office. So, you know, we were just trying to enhance. This just looked like an opportunity to do something cool with this little building. And, you know, I think little offices in Escalon makes sense. And then with COVID and all the changes there, I think you're going to find that people are going to want to live in the apartment in the back and then have their office in the front. And I think that generally speaking, offices, you know, are probably not going to be in such high demand as we move forward into the future. I just think culture has changed in that regard. So I think mixed use is 100% going to be the wave of the future, work play or, you know, lofts or things like that. And you're seeing people do that all over California, you know, moving in other states even now and having their employers be in California. So I just think it makes sense as far as that's concerned. But It needs sense within the community.
I'm sorry, I need to ask staff another question. So remind me, what is the requirement for covered parking for residential?
The primary residential unit requires 2 covered parking spaces. The ADU just needs the parking spaces, but they do not have to be covered.
Okay, so now back to Mr. Lear on the proposed asphalt parking lot. How many parking stalls do you envision to be able to put in that spot to cover both the ADU and the apartment?
I think we had 4. I think we had envisioned 2 for the apartment unit and 2 for the ADU. And then we had an additional 8 parking spaces that we were going to keep designated for the front office.
And those front offices are along Oklahoma, correct?
Correct.
Okay. I think that addresses my question about ADA. Because
Okay.
I'm envisioning them all being together and logistically, I mean, people coming in and out of the office and then trying to go to the apartment and back and forth, it would have just been a nightmare. But if we're separating the 2 and having 2 separate entrances, that makes sense.
Yeah, that's the plan. Yeah. Just for reasons of liability, it's advantageous to completely separate, those if it's possible. I know we have a little bit of shared on Main. We've got the 4 residential and then the 4 commercial. It's kind of, but even path of travel is a little different, like you're going to go to the sidewalk front office or you're going to go to the residential portion. So, we actually at one point tried to completely separate the commercial residential and the gated area on Main. And then it just didn't seem like we were going to have to go back through everything in order to make that happen. It looked like. So, but yeah, if you can separate those, it just is better to do it for obvious reasons, I guess, like you're saying.
The other thing that we can do, we can make that parking lot on Rosanna, is it?
Rosina.
Deeper. Just didn't want to take those trees out of there.
Right now.
Yeah, those are existing palm trees. I mean, they're big.
And they're big fir trees in there.
It sounded like somebody else. Talking. You need to
I'm sorry.
who you are and your address, please.
Okay, it's 182 Aldrin Court in Ripon. And my name is Bill Lear. I'm
Okay.
David Lear's dad and builder developer.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, anybody that's gonna speak, please, provide your name and your address.
Mr. Chair, this is Mark Velasquez. Just for clarity, they don't need to provide their address. And if I may also address the main question for this commission is whether or not to permit the commercial use in a residential zone. As the staff report indicated, by default, this is a R1 residential zone, and by default, commercial and mixed use is not permitted in this area. So in order for the commission to approve the project, you need to make certain findings. Those are the 3 findings under the 1756-30 municipal code. And to date, we haven't heard anything on the record concerning those 3 findings, evidence supporting those 3 findings that would permit this use project. So I'm just suggesting, Mr. Chair, that we focus some of the questions, at least, on the actual things this commission needs to determine whether uses could be permitted.
Okay, thank you. Any other comments from the audience or questions?
Shucks, I don't know what that means exactly. Yeah.
It means that right now it's an R1.
Yeah.
Can't You can't mix it.
So is just so we understand clearly, is it okay if we go in and out as far as questions, if we have a little back and forth as we're working through this?
Well, as long as I know, unfortunately, I can't see many people. I don't know who's talking. I don't know if you are in the chamber or you're calling in or you're to the go-to. So, I mean, just so we have some sense of who's talking, maybe at least say who you are when you start,
Sure.
so we understand who we're talking to. And
Sure.
okay,
Okay, so this is David Lear again. Okay, just so I understand what Mark was saying, although this is a zoned in a single family residential zoning, and it's been utilized for the past, I guess, 35 years under a conditional use permit for dental office, moving forward, this project's not at all, just trying to understand this. The current findings would be that this project is not up for approval as a mixed use. Is that I mean, it's not even able to be approved as mixed use?
well, this is a chairperson. From what I understand from the municipal codes, that if a use permit ceases to exist for 6 months, then it reverts back to its existing zoning. Correct me, Mark, if
Right.
I'm mistaken.
Yes, this is Mark Velasquez. I think the staff made it clear in their report
Yeah.
that yes, after first of all, from the report, and staff could clarify this or confirm this, it was not conforming use as a dental office. So there was no use permit previously to allow it to be an office. And regardless, it has not been used as an office for at least 6 months. So by default, by operation of law, it defaults back to residential only.
Which is why, David Lear again, which is why we applied for a conditional use permit at all, correct? I mean, that's why we're here having this meeting today, was because we're actually asking for permission to do what it is that we're doing.
Correct.
And this is Mark Velasquez, as I was saying, in order to do that, you have to make certain findings. That's all I was pointing out, was this discussion for the last almost 45 minutes has not at all touched on the basis to allow it to be used in a commercial or non-conforming. And I was just trying to steer the conversation to that point.
Mr. Chair, this is Commissioner Stroman.
Go ahead.
So on our report, I should probably save my comments until after we close the public hearing. So I will wait till we close the public hearing to share my comments.
Okay, that's appreciated. Any other comments from the commission?
Hi, Chair. Yeah, this is Mark Sarkozy. To the Lears, I'm just, wondering if this is not approved for mixed use, is there any opportunity to, because I noticed on you wrote a nice letter, certainly explaining the benefits of it, and there's lots of benefits for low income on the housing. Is there, if that office is not part of the plan, is there any option for you to move forward with any type of project that does not contain an office, and then it wouldn't be mixed use?
Yeah, I think that our vantage point has been that businesses struggle in the city of Escalon, and there's a problem with the tax revenue. And I think our vision has been to try to maximize value with the existing properties that are already built there in the city of Escalon, because it just doesn't make sense to do new construction commercial, especially there. And I think it was more or less, from our perspective, an opportunity to enhance another small property there in the city. And then, we always come from the vantage point that when we make these types of investments, that it encourages other people to also do the same, and this is a small project again. And it's a little city. I think these kind of things do encourage people. I mean, we always had the idea that, well, if we didn't get the mixed use approved in this capacity, you could have your primary dwelling, then you could have your junior ADU, so more or less the duplex, and then you could have your ADU, 663 square feet ADU. And what's to say that somebody doesn't use that front primary residence or back as primary, however it's defined, as a home office? And then we're completely not even having to comply with ADA whatsoever, other than filing, city of Escalon business license and not having to add the extras. In fact, it would be probably more cost effective. I just think that our vantage point was, hey, let's enhance his old office and make it a lot nicer. Let's go seal and slurry on that parking lot. Let's stripe it. Let's put in the handicap. Let's trim back all these messed up trees. Let's really enhance his property, and let's add to what they did next door, because they cleaned it up over there too. The COVID things right there next door, the temporary modular unit. But yeah, if the planning commission sees use, or this property being better utilized as more or less with a new municipal code of the state law, if it could be a home office in the front either way, I think. So without having the quote unquote conditional use approval attached to it, in fact, it's easier to finance as a residence. So I think actually we're jumping through more hoops to making it an office, but I also felt that the versatility of use made sense. And I thought that for the city of Escalon, it was a win, because not very many small businesses can even make it at all. So why not open up some doors for office to work? I mean, but it doesn't have to go that way. That's why we were going to move there and make it nice, and have some more office for us too. But yeah, I'm always open to your guys' ideas. You know what I mean?
Okay. Yeah, thank you. I mean, it does, looking at the, driving by and then looking at the picture right here, I mean, the parking lot's almost, between you and the, the property to the, I guess, what is that, south, I guess?
Yeah.
It certainly almost, yeah, there we go. I mean, the parking lots nearly merge. So it's a good, it's already there. Yeah. So I appreciate the comment about, possibly being flexible. I'd be interested to hear what the other commissioners' thoughts are.
Yeah.
This is the chair. The applicant, are you okay with all the specific conditions of approval, those all being met, and move forward?
With regards to the ADA?
No, I'm talking about the specific, I don't know how many, 16, 18 conditions listed on the staff report.
Mr. Chair, there are actually 3.
Well,
Three specifics, the rest are standard.
well, okay, then there's the standard, okay, the others. So there's a total of 18 conditions. 3 specific and the remainder are standard conditions.
Ooh. You see all the conditions? Let's see if we can get a look at those conditions, maybe.
David, I can read them to you so you have them.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, that'd be great.
So number one says, there are 3 specific conditions for approval. Number one states this conditional use permit as approved by the planning commission on January 12, 2021 shall run with the land and its benefits and limitations are binding on subsequent owners. The conditional use permit is approval to allow a business, professional, and or medical office to continue at this location to convert 750 square feet of the former office space into a primary residential unit and add a 663 square foot accessory dwelling unit on the property. That's number one. Number two, landscape. All front and side yard areas visible from the street shall be landscaped in accordance with the city municipal code and state the MWELO requirements. Number three says the two parking spaces for the primary dwelling unit shall be covered spaces. Covered parking structure shall meet municipal code requirements. Commercial parking lot shall be restriped and be updated to ADA compliance.
It's just be a cheap carport.
Those are the 3 specific conditions.
Okay. I think those are, we can do those. The only one I'd have a question mark on is having to provide additional covered parking. I know it's not required in the new ADA municipal code. The state municipal code is not requiring that, and I think it's an existing requirement. Like if I were to build brand new, it would be a requirement to cover 2 parking spaces. But provided that this is existing, I'm just curious to know why we absolutely would need to.
This is Diana. So the 2
Right.
covered parking spaces are for the creation of your primary dwelling unit. Since there is no current dwelling unit on the property, you would be creating a primary dwelling unit, and the primary needs 2 covered parking spaces. You are correct, the EDU does not need covered parking.
Okay, just to go back to Mark's point earlier, provided that this has not been used as a office for 6 months or as a dental, the zoning actually is single family residential. So it's actually an existing single family residential home. And it would not be required actually to provide, let's say, covered parking, right? If we
No, because its use was commercial, that was an office. It needs to be converted to a residence. That includes removal of that front parking lot. It's in the staff report. Let me go find it.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's interesting. So what you're saying is for it to go back to.
Just one second, David. The owner of the property is required to convert the office to a residence. Modify the existing parking lot to be a residential driveway or landscape area and provide 2 covered parking spaces.
Oh, so this is if it goes back to single family residential and we don't get approval today.
Correct.
Then in order to buy it and utilize it, there's going to be special restrictions placed, like let's say maybe on the deed on the property for anybody buying that property.
No, it's not special restrictions. It's not deed restricted. Right now, that property is single family residential. So whoever buys it and wants to occupy it, they have to convert it to a house with a driveway.
Right, that's what I mean. Yeah, so like
parking spaces with landscaping.
Right, so anybody buying that house now, even though it's single family, will be required by the city of Escalon to convert it, like provide kitchen, all these other things. It's not just going to be a requirement, like let's say by the appraiser who says, hey, or the lender who says, hey, you need a kitchen in there in order for us to consider the single family residential. In addition to that, the city's actually saying, yeah, and you're gonna have to pull out that parking lot, provide a standard driveway and all these other little conditions to even using it as a single family residential house at all.
Right, that the building and the site have to be converted to residential. Residential properties
Okay.
don't have parking lots. They have a driveway.
I got you. Well, the reason I'm asking is because that impacts value. That impacts actually property value. The property's not worth as much if you've got to jump through all these extra hoops. You know what I mean? Even to convert as a single family residential, which again, I think goes back to the argument that it's been used for 30, 35 years as a commercial. And I think our approach to this as redeveloping in the way that we like to adds additional housing for residents, for local residents. That makes sense. I think the office makes sense. And I think the ADU is conforming with what the state of California said, because we're in a housing crisis. And that approach probably was maybe right on, right?
David, I can't tell you what to do by any means. But I think if you were to purchase the property and try to convert it back to a single family residence,
Yeah.
I wouldn't, I can't, like I said, I can't tell you what to do, but I think you're opening up a bigger can of worms for yourself if you consider that.
No, that makes sense. Yeah. I didn't realize if it was single family. I didn't even know that. So I was like, oh, okay. That's interesting. But things like these are all special use properties. It's, you know what I mean? Like there's always something you're learning. Let's just put it that way. You know what I mean? So I wasn't to be argumentative at all. I was just like figuring out, wow. So in approaching this, there's actually extras to even utilizing in a single family. So maybe going back to the question earlier, being more open to multiple uses, I hadn't realized that would kick in all of these extra things that Diana was just talking about. So that might be tough then, actually. So yeah, that's what I was just kind of getting at. That's all.
So this is the chair again. So
Okay.
my initial question, are you okay with all the conditions for approval on this moving forward, considering the fact that the
Same mill, what we're
it was a
doing.
non-conforming use, it's been vacant for 6 months, so it's reverted
Sure.
back to residential. We need to figure out what direction you're looking at, because I would like to close this and bring it back to the commission and make some sort of decision on what direction we're going with this. So we're trying to get a feel of, if this works for you or not.
What do you think?
Oh, it can be a duplex too, right?
Yeah, I think we're good to go. I think if planning commission is feeling positive about us moving forward with it, then I mean obviously you would need to, but I think we can make those conditions work for us.
Okay. Any other comments from the audience? Any other questions for the applicant from the planning commission? Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for comments.
There are many pluses and minuses connected with this project. Yes, the ADU is advisable by the state. Yes, infill is nice. The current property is not aesthetically pleasing. It would be nice to fix it up. But I don't think this is the best way to fix up this property. And our experience with the Lears, quite frankly, has not been good based on the other projects they've got going in the community. And they don't seem very organized for tonight's meeting. And as far as those 3 findings, no, it's not necessary or desirable. No, the use will not be properly related to other uses. And then the third one is a question mark. I'm not in favor of putting a commercial entity inside a residential neighborhood, even though it was commercial before. I think it needs to stay residential and be developed residentially. That's my view.
Mark, Sean, or Kurt, either one of you would like to make a comment?
No. So I'm sorry, Mark, our Commissioner Sarkozy and Commissioner Kurt, but I respectfully disagree with you, Commissioner Willis. We have, I'm not picking on Mr. Lear, but I'm gonna say your name again. You know, Mr. Lear, and I'm gonna pick on Mr. Grasky because he's about 35 feet in front of me. You know, here are two gentlemen that are truly trying to make a difference in our little community. And I understand about the mixed use, and I can totally I can understand and appreciate your concerns, Commissioner Willis, but I think that it does meet, I wouldn't say it's necessary, but I would say it's desirable because you have a doctor's office literally right adjacent to the property. And that it is related to other uses because like I just mentioned, we have a doctor's office right beside. So this little commercial area really would not be a detriment to the neighborhood, at least in my opinion. Now, last but certainly not least, it does not adversely affect the health or safety of people in the residence. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, staff, but we sent the notification to the neighbors and received no comments back.
That's correct.
So, you know, if, I don't know, I can't, like I said, I can't speak for the Lears, but if this property has to be converted back to single family residential, I think that it will continue to remain vacant for another 6, 12, 18, 24 months, because as soon as somebody shows up to say, oh, I'm gonna buy this property, and then they get notified, oh, by the way, you have to tear out all this asphalt, you need to put in landscaping, et cetera, et cetera. It doesn't pencil out, and somebody's just gonna walk away, and now we're left with a vacant eyesore in the neighborhood for years to come. So I actually, I think that I recommend that we do move forward with the conditional use permit. It's not like the commercial development is, we're not looking at a lot of foot traffic. I mean, the office is going to be 2 offices, if you will. So it's not like we have multiple people, 10, 15 cars sitting in the parking lot all the time. And given that the parking lot will be separated from residential to commercial, actually, I'm in favor of the project.
Thank you, Commissioner. Kurt or Mark, either one of you?
Yeah, I'll jump in. Yeah, so my thoughts are similar to Sean's, that you know, it hasn't it's been used for that for such a long time, and here we have a developer who is trying to you know, has other projects in the city, and although what Commissioner Willis says, yes, some of the projects have been taking their time, and we are hoping that they're coming along, and we're hoping they get done real soon. And I know they'll look good, but I am afraid that this property, it will just become a nuisance over time because of the cost and conditions to change it back. I just think, you know, if we have a developer here that you know, is enthusiastic about working on this property, and you know, is ready to move forward to it, you know, and then it also addresses the concerns of low income housing. So I'm in favor of approving the application.
Okay.
I guess I'll go next, Chairman Castellanos. I totally agree with Commissioner Willis. I look at that property, I've driven by it, and I look at the findings that we have to approve a conditional use permit. that property hasn't been up for sale for, I don't know, all that long, compared to some of the other eyesores that we have in the community that still exist. We have a PD development in our triangle downtown. That's special. The Lears have even said in the past that it's the only one in the entire region. So I'm not questioning whether we can't do PD or something like this in a PD. However, this is a neighborhood. I drove through, and I just think that looking at that property there, it ought to go back to residential. And if hopefully we can get a developer in there that will look at maybe a triplex, can look to see how that would fit in with the neighborhood. I haven't heard anything about they've got anybody lined up to take over a doctor's office. And based on past practices, you look at future performance, and I can't in all good conscience approve this conditional use permit. So that's just how I feel.
Mr. Chair, this is Mark Velasquez. As part of what I'm looking at in terms of the findings that need to be done, I think something missed. We're missing some information here that I'm trying to point out. It starts off with that the use is necessary and desirable in relation to the purpose of the Escalon general plan, this title, economic, social, and environmental status of the city. And what we have here is a request to make it partially commercial. The specific use, I think we're all been under the impression that it's only going to be used as a doctor's office, but that is not what has been presented in the application. The application actually doesn't specify the specific use, whether it's going to be a doctor's office, a marijuana dispensary, a corner market selling liquor. So there needs to be some type of relationship discussed to the actual use of the commercial, because what's being discussed tonight is more of almost a zoning amendment than it is a use permit. And I think, unfortunately, it's before us because the applicant, if I may politely say, was not prepared, and it doesn't even seem he even read what the zoning was for this particular plot before coming before this commission. So my role here is to keep us focused on what this commission needs to find in order to, if they want to, approve this use. And I'd like to point out that so far we don't even have a description, let alone a guarantee of what the use is going to be.
So, Mr. Velasquez, just for my own education, this is Commissioner Stroman, are you saying this is outside of this project, but are you saying anytime a conditional use permit comes to the Planning Commission for approval, a specific use must be identified according to the statute?
Well, the use has to be identified, and what do we mean by what do you mean by specific? So it has to be identified by a particular type of use. So if the use here is to make it a office, then that's what it should say. That should be the use, so this commission knows, hey, there's going to be office next to houses versus a dispensary next to offices. So in that regard, it does need to say what the use is going to be. Otherwise, how is so what's going to happen? What may happen is it goes forward, and then some other business moves in, right? Applies, whether it's a dentist office or a liquor store or whatever. They're going to apply to the city, and then they're going to have trouble because all of a sudden this area is not zoned for that type of store. And we're not and what's before this commission is not a granting of anything goes in this space, right? I don't think anybody's agreeing to that at this point.
Right. With all due respect, Mr. Velasquez, we have a standard development application from the applicant, and item number 10A alpha says The question says, if no new construction, what will be done to the site or building? And what will be the use of this site or building? And they identify very specifically the remodel mixed use, turn front into an office, and then back into a residential. So they're saying that the front area is going to be the office, and then the other part is going to be a residence. At least that's the way I interpret this. Maybe I have it backwards.
And so what Mark is saying is, yeah, that's in the application, and that's what Mr. Lear is applying for. But he is asking for it to be more specific in the approval. That way it's added into the restrictions so that in the future, if somebody decides to lease or is interested in it, and like he says, they're not an office use, dental, chiropractic, doctor office. It's specific enough to where that person would know, and we know that there's a condition for the use to specifically be office.
So as a condition for approval, we identify specific.
Yeah.
As an office, not you can do whatever you want kind of.
Yeah, not as commercial, because commercial opens the door for everything commercial, but specific to office in the approval. That way, anything that is an office use, which our code identifies, was it dental, chiropractic, doctor's office.
Office.
Yeah, those types of office have their own separate column of use in our list of permitted uses. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Velasquez. I hope you don't think I was questioning your authority.
No, this was perfect. I'm glad staff clarified, because that's exactly what I was talking about. And number 10 indicated, and in number 10 you were pointing out, was how I read it is they're saying if it's not mixed use, then they'll just turn it into a residential property, which is what it is right now by default. But thank you, and thank you for clarifying that.
Yeah, well, this is Steve. I appreciate your input on that. And, my initial question to staff, I was trying to see if we could lead the applicant to develop this as a residential as opposed to the mixed use. I have been in this community several years, and to be honest, I wasn't aware that there was a dentist office in that location. It doesn't seem like a logical place to put an office or retail or anything else in a residential neighborhood that you have absolutely no exposure anywhere. I know the property in front of it, or to the south of that at one time, was the Escalon ambulance occupied that space. But I was not aware that there was a dental office there, and personally, I would prefer to see that property be a residential use as it is zoned and not a mixed use. I would, multifamily, 3 units, affordable, that's all great. I'm not sure what the market value of a 500 square foot, office space, how many applicants are going to run to that location. I don't know. I'm not in favor of approving the application on this. So anyway, do I hear anybody make a motion?
Is it okay if I ask a question? This is David Lear again.
Oh, well, let me open back up the notes. Can I ask that if you can hold it to no more than 5 minutes, please?
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Go ahead.
Okay. So when Mark was saying that, I was looking at what staff had written, and I thought they actually had said business, professional, or medical. They actually put it in this proposal.
You are correct, David. Item number 2 says, approve the conditional use permit as requested to allow mixed use on a residential lot, which would allow a business, professional, and/or medical office use to continue and allow the creation of a primary attached dwelling unit. So what Mr. Velasquez noted is that if this project were to move forward, that we need to refine that even further, because a business can be any business. I mean, you could sell anything at a business. So what Mr. Velasquez is saying, that if this were to be approved, it needs to be more refined.
I got you. You know, I just in our background doing professional commercial office leasing, I've probably done 350 at least commercial leases. We typically put general office for any type of office designation in our leases. We've never had a lease contested, I don't think, ever. But if you get into selling, let's say, marijuana, like something like that, you know, that would definitively be, I think, some type of special use permit, or that's got to definitely, I think, be something that the city of Escalon as a whole probably passes, or definitely liquor. Those are all special license requirements. But I'm not, you know, that's just in my experience. So I'm just one small fry. But anyways, that's all.
Okay, thank you. So I'll bring it back to the commission.
I make a motion that we deny the conditional use permit and that the property remains single-family residential.
I'll second.
To have a vote, all in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed?
No.
Sorry, I was muted. Aye for no.
Okay, so there,
Chair Castellanos, we didn't catch the vote. Can you do it one more time? And since we have so many on the go-to meeting, if you say your name when you vote, so we know how each person votes.
if we do what? Click on our name?
And she just asked for their votes.
Oh,
May I suggest a roll call vote?
roll
May I
call.
suggest that?
Here.
Sure, we can do a roll call vote.
Oh, again, the motion is to deny the conditional use permit and the property remains single-family residential. Commissioner Willis concurs with that. Deny.
Do I hear a
Commissioner
second?
Danziger,
I said aye.
Commissioner Sarkozy,
No.
Commissioner Stroman,
No.
and Chair Castellanos.
Yes.
Say that. Motion
And
passes.
the motion passes 3-2 to deny the conditional use permit.
Chairman Castellanos,
Yes.
may I, in arrears, may I say that I didn't get a chance to, but I approved the minutes, if that could be entered into the record from the
Yes.
previous meeting? Thank you.
Sure, we can
Okay, so we go on to the
Item number 3.
item number 3. This is applicant file number 2736. It is for property on 1528 Roosevelt Avenue, Escalon. The applicant is appealing the city planner, city enforcement on setback on their property. Could I have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. As you can see in the staff report, we do have a lot of background and overview. So as you may be aware, this property was formerly a part of our former Escalon lumberyard. It is the vacant and developed area along the railroad tracks that wraps around the main old or former Escalon lumber building and goes over to Roosevelt Avenue, vacant undeveloped dirt area as of right now cleared. Back in August, that area was required to be cleaned up after the Escalon lumberyard had sold and changed ownership. And then around that time, the applicant was having trouble with semi-trucks and vehicles parking in the area. So we did reach out to the applicant because we had to have a relationship with them, talking about future projects and things and uses that could be done on that property. And talk to them about adding signage and keeping making sure to keep the property clear. So then later on that year, they had put up a temporary fence. And you may recall around this time as well that the fencing that was put up at that area was a portable temporary cyclone fencing around the property, and city staff's interpretation and past practice of the municipal code regulations regarding that type of fencing was that that type of fencing was considered temporary and only used during construction activities. So we did reach out to the applicant and advise them of that municipal code regulation and the interpretation of the code. And to make that more clear, because we did realize that it was being interpreted differently than staff was interpreting it and using it over the past several years, and you may recall, we brought those items forward to be amended. So we did update our municipal code to address those issues specific to the temporary fencing, as well as some other areas regarding the temporary structures. At that time, they were having an issue with property lines, and so we did reach out to them to ask about the status of the property, because they did talk about moving a project forward. And we gave them an accommodation of 3 to 6 months to allow that temporary fencing so that they could get their project together and submit an application. We did reach back out to them to check the status of the fencing and the application, and we're willing to keep accommodating that fencing as long as they were moving forward with that project application. So at that time, we also did advise the applicant that the development plans for the lumberyard office, or the former lumberyard office, were approved, which meant that due to potential safety concerns and railroad tracks in such close proximity, that the city would not approve an additional driveway on First Street, which would be between the former lumberyard office and the railroad tracks, which is the applicant's current property. At the end of July of 2020, the applicant's attorney had indicated that they were no longer interested in doing an equipment rental business, which was the original proposal, and were interested in doing RV and boat storage. As you may recall, we approved a project back in 2018. We also just renewed that project, I believe at the last Planning Commission meeting. And it was a project here along McHenry Avenue for RV boat storage. And it was a use permit that was approved, and it had a number of conditions. So we shared that information with the applicant so they'd have an idea of what that type of project that had recently been before the Planning Commission, and given certain conditions to make sure that they were aware these type of conditions may likely be approved or required as that type of proposal for a project, because it was what was approved the last time that type of project came to the Planning Commission for review. They also inquired about putting in temporary fencing. They're interested in installing a chain link fence with slats, and asked whether it would be acceptable. And we did respond and let them know that it would be acceptable, except that the use of chain link fencing material was prohibited in the required front yard area. Staff had also suggested that they replace the temporary construction fencing with wooden posts and cables and just put the no trespassing signs in, because that would address the issue of vehicles getting onto the property and not be a infeasible or high cost, something simple that could be done to just address the issue they were having, which was the semi-trucks or vehicles pulling onto the property. Currently, the property is a vacant lot, but the only possible location for that front yard would be facing Roosevelt Avenue due to the train tracks to the rear of the property and private property on either side. Staff further advised that the Planning Commission may require different fencing and/or walls as a part of the review process for a use permit for RV boat storage yard. Staff was clear that the proposed fencing might not be acceptable to Planning Commission for any future proposed project. As such, staff recommended that the fencing be addressed as a part of a project application so that the applicant could obtain Planning Commission approval on the fencing prior to installing it. It was also the opinion of staff that the proposed chain link fence with slats would not be acceptable to the Planning Commission or surrounding neighbors in the area based upon the past commission approval on the similar projects. We also suggested not using the chain link fencing where it would be visible along Roosevelt Avenue and First Street because it led into the city's downtown business district and is not considered a quality, aesthetically attractive material in a commercial zoning district. And as you're aware, in moving forward with a use permit, those type of conditions can be made because it's a discretionary permit. The applicant did not agree with staff's responses, suggestions, or interpretations on the code. They did argue that the municipal code did not apply because the lot was vacant and therefore had no front yard area. The applicant also advised that they would not be moving forward with the RV boat storage project as they felt it would cost too much and take too long for the repayment of improvements. These ongoing discussions with the applicant led to the attorney, led to staff moving forward with amendments on the code like we discussed earlier. And we did advise the applicant that we're moving forward with those changes to the municipal code that we did have approved. And they advised that they would move forward with the fence under the current code, so those new requirements wouldn't apply. When we did have those public hearings regarding those amendments and changes, neither the attorney or the applicant came to those public hearings or provided any comments or feedback regarding those amendments that were made. When they started moving forward on the permanent fencing, our public works superintendent was called out to the site where he met with the applicant, the fencing contractor, and the neighboring property owner to assist with addressing potential property line issues. The superintendent reviewed the city's setback and height requirements with the applicant and fencing contractor, marked where the fencing posts could be installed for the permanent fence, and left the property after everyone that was present agreed and understood those requirements. Pursuant to the municipal code section 17.41030B, no walls or fencing is permitted within the required front yard, side yard adjacent to a street or alley, or that portion of a required rear yard within 15 feet of a street or alley where adjacent to the side yard, except a wall or fence no higher than 30 inches may be constructed to screen parking lots. The street includes street improvements, curb, gutter, sidewalk. The 15 feet is measured from the back of the sidewalk. In the applicant's case, it would be 15 feet from the back of where the sidewalk will be when installed, as there's currently no sidewalk improvements on Roosevelt in front of the applicant's property. In most cases, this results in the setback for a fence being 20 feet from the edge of the street pavement as identified in First Street or on First Street. Roosevelt Avenue is a little different based on the roadway conditions and future placements of sidewalks. On Roosevelt Avenue, the city based the setback off the new driveway apron that was recently installed for the 16-space public parking area known as Prospect, and an approved but not yet constructed driveway apron of the commercially used property next door as to where the sidewalk would be. Staff then applied the 15-foot setback for the future curb alignment of the portion of Roosevelt Avenue. This placed the setback at approximately 23 feet off from the roadway. Staff and engineering applied the setback in this manner because the goal is to have conformity down the entire street. The properties currently under development as commercial are to city standards for commercial areas. The residences along Roosevelt Avenue are currently in non-conforming status, but are zoned as commercial for future planning processes. When redeveloped, they will be required to be developed in accordance with the city's commercial requirements, which will coincide with the neighboring commercial property improvements along the roadway. The following week after the superintendent met and marked the location for the fencing, the applicant remarked the area to where they wanted the fence posts installed within the setback and instructed the contractor to install it as they marked it, not where the city marked it. The contractor thereafter placed the posts within that 15-foot setback as instructed by the applicant. Public Works revisited the property, remeasured the setback, and again marked the post for the 15-foot setback. In October, the city issued a demand to cease and desist fence installation at that location, 1528 Roosevelt, which is listed in the document as Exhibit A. It's also a part of the applicant's appeal. This letter also served as a reminder that the future driveway would not be approved on First Street due to safety concerns. The applicant wanted to install a gate on First Street side of the subject property, presumably in anticipation of a future approval for a driveway. Since the initial cease and desist letter was issued, the applicant has added an additional fence post and completed the fencing on the First Street side, encroaching into the 15-foot setback with a side gate. Code enforcement actions have not been taken on these items pending decision of the appeal. In response to the cease and desist demand, the applicant and their attorney have requested multiple meetings to meet on site and review and discuss the city's setback requirements. To date, our public works superintendent, the city engineer, the engineering surveyor, a public works crew leader, the city manager, and the city attorney have all attended meetings with the applicant or their attorney on site regarding the applicant's fence. City staff advised the applicant's attorney that if they did not agree with the municipal code requirements, they would need to file an appeal and go before the planning commission for a ruling. So the appeal letter with the attachments is listed as Exhibit B. In summary, the applicant does not believe the city setback requirements in the municipal code applies to their property because 1, the property is vacant land. 2, there are no buildings on the property. 3, there is no defined front, side, or rear yard since there is no building. And 4, if there is no defined front yard, then there is no setback requirement. In short, the applicant argues that the code does not apply and therefore you can place whatever type of fence they want wherever they want on the property. Staff's response to the applicant's appeal. Staff disagrees with the applicant's interpretation of the municipal code for the following reasons. 1, pursuant to 17.81260, which is a wide definition for yard front, means a yard extending across the front of the line between the inner side yard lines and measured from the front line of the lot to the nearest line of the building, provided that if any official plan line has been established for the street upon which the lot faces, then such measurement shall be taken from such official plan line to the nearest line of the building. And then we do have the illustration there. 2, whether or not there is a defined front, back, side yard, it is all a yard. 3, pursuant to EMC 17.41030B, whether a front, side, or rear yard fencing above 30 inches is prohibited within 15 feet from all of them. As stated in number 2 above, it is all a yard, therefore a setback to the fence at issue is required. Number 4, the only possible location for a front yard due to the neighboring properties to the sides and the railroad track to the rear can be on Roosevelt Avenue. As previously discussed, the city has advised that a driveway on First Street will not be approved if the applicant develops the property in the future due to safety concerns and its proximity to the railroad tracks. By default, the property facing Roosevelt Avenue is the applicant's frontage. Number 5, the city has historically interpreted the sidewalk to be incorporated in the street, therefore required the setback to be measured from where the sidewalk would be located in the event it has not been constructed yet. It is a reasonable interpretation of street to include sidewalks, since sidewalks are thoroughfares which afford principal means of access onto abutting property. 6, there are no exemptions or exceptions in the municipal code stating that the setback should not apply to vacant and undeveloped lots. 7, the lack of clarity regarding the term required in the municipal code does not negate the requirements within the code. Number 8, the applicant argues that municipal code section 17.190404 stands for the proposition that a yard in a C2 zone is required under EMC 17.411030B only if the property abuts or across the street or alley from a residential zone. However, there's another interpretation in the municipal code 17.19.0404, which the city believes better reflects the intent of the municipal code. And that is section 17.19.0404 only addresses a very particular situation where when a commercial lot abuts or is across the street from a residential lot. In this circumstance, the code dictates the minimum size. This makes sense given that there is a concern for a buffer, usually a larger one, between a commercial property and a residential one. Section 17.19.0404 only prescribes the minimum size of a yard in a C2 zone that abuts a residential zone. It does not describe whether or not a yard is required under 17.41030B. 9. City staff treats all applicants and citizens the same. City staff has made every effort possible, spent many staff hours and thousands of dollars in attorney fee to work with the applicant on this issue and the development of their property, including being proactive on their behalf, as well as for the city's future development of a downtown business district area. The applicant points out that other properties fencing located in the required setback areas, which are also included as a part of their appeal, and feels that they should be allowed to do the same. Those properties went through the site plan review process and had their proposed fencing approved as a part of their project development applications. Staff has recommended to the applicant on multiple occasions that they could do the same. The current municipal code requirements apply to all new development in the city unless otherwise modified by the Planning Commission and/or City Council at their site plan review. This area of the city is currently under substantial redevelopment. The city has a First Street beautification project pending, and this area will become home to several new businesses, which includes a wine tasting business and possibly a future restaurant. The city has an obligation to ensure that the fencing installed in the area meets the municipal code at minimum, as the fencing may be there indefinitely if the applicant chooses not to develop the property in the future. So our recommendation is that city staff stands by the position that the setback requirements for non-residential districts be applied as stated in accordance with the municipal code and as interpreted and applied by the city staff. We recommend that the Planning Commission reject the applicant's appeal and require the applicant to install the fence in accordance with EMC 17.41030B. In accordance with the municipal code, a public hearing notice did appear in the newspaper and was mailed to the property owners within 300 feet. We did not receive any responses regarding the notice. The Planning Commission's decision on this item will begin a 10-day appeal period where the action may be appealed to the City Council, which would expire on Wednesday, January 27, 2021 at 5 p.m. If approved and there is no appeal filed within that period, the applicant may proceed. If denied and no appeal is filed, the decision of the Planning Commission is final. The appeal fee is $645. So the applicant or the Planning Commission would take the following steps to move forward with this appeal. 1 would be opening the public hearing and taking any public testimony on the appeal. 2, close the public hearing, and 3, take action on the appeal. In accordance with the Municipal Code Section 17.59080, the Planning Commission shall hear and decide appeals from any action of the city planner and may affirm or reverse the action in whole or in part. The Planning Commission shall not be limited in its review of that portion of the action complained of, but may consider the entire matter, and in doing so may add, modify, or delete conditions as deems necessary or proper. So as described in the report, Exhibit A is the appeal letter, which has some pictures. Those pictures were in black and white, and so we did put a separate copy of the letter on our end that has the pictures in color. And then we also added some additional photos, as well as various email correspondence between city staff and the applicant's attorney as letter E. And then because there are multiple municipal code sections referred to in the staff report and the appeal, Exhibit C is a listing of all those sections in case you did not have your binder available for you for Title 17. And if you have any questions, staff is here to answer them. We do have the applicant and their attorney in the audience, so they can come up to the podium and answer any questions. They did advise that they did have a presentation that they wanted to do on their end. So if you have any questions, please let me know.
Any questions from staff, council, and commission?
Just a couple from Commissioner Willis. Okay, the reference to the 30 inches and whatnot, is there actually a fence on this property that needs to be 30 inches high and cannot be taller?
So any fence that's placed in that setback area, which is that 15 feet from the sidewalk, if it's in that 15 feet measured from the back of the sidewalk, it cannot be taller than 30 inches.
We're talking about First Street or we're talking about Roosevelt?
Both sides.
So you're saying that if they go with an RV storage, it has to be a 30-inch fence? It can't be a 6 or 7 foot fence for protection and security?
Unless otherwise, so our current municipal code for fences, hedges, and walls states 15 feet from back of sidewalk for those areas. But in moving forward with the project, like we have those projects in town, the most recent one would be the Referral Auto, which their fencing was there before.
Yeah.
They proposed as a part of their project where they wanted the fencing to be located and the height that they would build it, as well as materials and such. And because that was a part of the use permit, it was approved as a part of the project, which is what we were recommending to the applicant. If you're moving forward with your project, it would be best to put the fencing in at the same time. That way you get approval on however you want the fencing to be installed that goes with your use, as opposed to trying to put it in now where our setback requirements are the 15 feet from back of sidewalk. So it forces it to be back unless they want to keep it at the 30 inches tall.
Well, and I can check with the applicant, but where you've got the pole with the blue around it that says you can't put a fence farther up, and they went closer to the fence in the setback area, what is that, how many square feet is that they've gained, and why not just have the fence there?
I mean, and that's something that they could apply for the variance for or go through a process to do, yeah.
And it says here the land is vacant. Don't they own that little building? Isn't that part of their property? That little building on Roosevelt?
On Roosevelt, that was formerly a house. They did buy that parcel. That parcel was a separate purchase and a separate use. It's a house. I think they do have intentions, in the past they've mentioned trying to convert it into an office for when they did develop that property. But it is a separate parcel that at this point, to our knowledge, isn't being discussed at this point.
Okay.
It's existing as what it is.
There's a piece of cyclone fencing that comes off of the west wall, and if it were, the fence were built from there to the pole with the blue tape on it, that would be at the setback point, it seems like, and it would be consistent if that fence is kept there. But again, we'll talk with them. Then what is Grazie having along their edge there? Are they putting up masonry or anything like that at the, where the parking for the restaurant and
Along Prospect?
no, on the other side,
On the other side?
where we told them they didn't have to put all the landscaping in and whatnot? Is that what kind of?
Abutting the fence that's up there now, is that what you're asking?
Is that gonna stay?
So the fence that's up there now, the applicant has put up. And I don't know if we're positive what Mr. Grossi.
Okay. Okay, that's all.
Mr. Chair, I just have one question for staff, and my question is directed towards the city manager. How much time do you believe that between all of the different departments, if you will, how much time do you think you've spent on this issue?
Oh, I would probably have to say somewhere in the range of 50 to 100 hours
Total,
between all staff members.
plus attorney's time outside of that?
Yeah.
Okay. Nothing further, Chair.
Any other commissioner questions?
Yeah.
This is Commissioner Danziger. This is for staff. Is a fence required on a vacant lot?
No, it is not. The city does not require any properties to have any fencing. It's not a requirement.
Okay, so if, for example, you were to want to keep large trucks from being able to use that property, you could actually put up posts with no trespassing at certain intervals instead of a fence.
Correct.
And has the applicant come forward with any proposals, solid proposals, that are going to come to fruition for that property?
They did have the last proposal was the RV storage lot, but as indicated in the staff report, they felt that it would be, too costly with the conditions that were, using the conditions on the last project that the Planning Commission approved. And so at this time, they advised us that they're not moving forward with that item. And so we're not sure as of today if there's another project proposal, if they're still looking into that.
Okay. In reading the email from Mark Velasquez, let's see, October 8th, 2020, he indicated that the fence posts are actually back to where the city wanted them to be. Is that correct? They're over 20 feet from the first portion of the street.
Tammy or Dan, can you, there was, one of the times the city engineer went out there, there was a post. There's been different times with different posts. At that point in time, there was a post that was properly within the bounds, but they have since added posts that are not.
Okay. Well, so at that point, they knew whether it's a lot or a yard in a C2 that the setback is 15 feet from the back of the sidewalk, and a sidewalk was explained to them would be part of the street at a later date, and that's why the city marked it where they did.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions for staff?
Hi, this is Commissioner Sarkozy. I don't have anything to add right now.
Okay, thank you. No, I don't have anything to add at this moment. To open up the public hearing?
Mr. Chair, before we open up the public hearing, I know I said I didn't have anything else, and I'm going to make this brief. But there's a whole lot of information in here, and I just want to make sure I understand the whole situation before we open up a public hearing.
Okay.
And this is more so a summary. I'm going to provide a summary. And I just want staff to provide, yeah, you're right, or no, this is actually what happened. So in the beginning, we received some complaints about trucks parking in there. So we notified the applicant, hey, you can't have trucks parking in here. Then the trucks moved, and then we told them, so then the applicant put up the temporary construction fence. Then city staff said the temporary construction fence, or the temporary fence, is only for construction use. So then the applicant took that down, and then they took it upon themselves to install this fence. And they started putting up the fence. City staff went out and advised them, you need to follow the city setbacks. And they chose to install the fence otherwise. And that's exactly where the issue now is because the existing fence doesn't meet the city setback codes nor the requirements. And the city staff issued a cease and desist order, and then the applicant filed an appeal on that. Is that the gist of it in summary? Am I missing anything in there?
I think that's pretty much it, yeah.
It has, it took place over a longer period of time because the temporary fencing was out there for over 6 months because we were trying to accommodate that project coming in. Because earlier that year, around August or September of 2019, it's in the staff report, they did submit a package for a project. But there was a lot of information needed to do the project that wasn't in there, so we had sent it back with a list of items that would need to be provided. And so we were anticipating that those are the items they were working out for the resubmittal. So then when the fence came up in that time, along with they were experiencing an issue with property lines and such, we accommodated it, waiting for that application to come in.
And it never,
Because it would, if the application came in and got approval, it would turn into some type of construction site. So, and we didn't want them to have to go through taking down this fence only to put it back up again if they were going to be constructing.
thank you. Nothing further, Chair.
Any other questions from the commission?
No.
Okay, so I will open up the public hearing. If somebody would like to speak in favor of the application, please provide your name and address the planning commission.
Good evening. My name is Brett Dickerson. I'm an attorney and I am representing the Coolmans in this matter. Greatly appreciate the opportunity to come in here and visit with you tonight. First off, there's a couple of comments that were made in the staff report that I think need to be addressed. It is not the intention of the Coolmans to put up any kind of fence they want, wherever they want. That's just categorically false. The Coolmans want to put up a fence according to the setbacks as required by the Escalon Municipal Code, not by an incorrect interpretation from staff. And that's our whole purpose for being here tonight. It has to do with what does your municipal code say regarding the setback requirements applicable to this particular lot. And that's what we're talking about. Now, if we're going to talk about setback requirements, we have to start with the discussion of what constitutes a yard under your municipal code. Now, your municipal code is extremely clear as to what constitutes a yard. It's defined textually. It's also defined graphically by way of the picture, the drawing is right there. In both locations in your code, a yard is defined within the context of where it sits in relation to a building. Both of those are totally in harmony with one another. And if there's a code section that says otherwise, staff has had 2 months to provide it to me in spite of multiple requests, and I've never seen it. Frankly, in the absence of a building, you cannot have a yard under your code. It's right there in both code sections. It's described in words, and it's described by way of a picture. Now, we addressed this issue with staff when we were at the site. How can you have a yard with no building? Their answer at that point was not to provide any contrary authority in the code. Their answer at that point was, well, this is just the way we've always done it. And what we believe, and our interpretation is that the entirety of this frontage on Roosevelt, roughly 200 feet, because that's the main entrance, that constitutes a front yard. That struck me and everybody else there as being odd. So we asked, where is the code section that supports that interpretation? We got crickets. Nothing whatsoever was told to us except this is the way we have always done it. So basically what they're doing is they have failed to answer a question to us, a very basic question. How do you have a front yard when there is no building for the yard to be in front of? They've yet to provide a statutory or common law answer to that question. For all intents and purposes, when it comes to this definition of a yard, they're telling the Coolmans to go into a circular room and stand in the corner. It's a perfect example of a non sequitur. It does not follow. Any little kid, if you send them into an empty building, an empty lot, and tell them to go stand in the front yard, the quizzical look that child is going to give you is going to tell you everything you need to know about where this dispute lies. So there can be no front yard. Hence the setback requirements that they have in 17.41.030 do not apply. And they've yet to provide us anything that says otherwise. The next code section that comes into play is the one that has been cited over and over again. 17.40.030. These setback requirements apply to a required front yard. Staff has chosen to gloss over that word. They just simply pretend it's not there. Nonetheless, statutory construction going back 100 years says your first goal in statutory construction is to read the words, provide them their plain meaning. These setback requirements only apply, according to the Escalon Municipal Code, to a required front yard. Now, we went and found what's few references anywhere in your code dealing with the required front yard. That has to do with C2 zoning, and I believe it applies to every commercial zone you have, that you have a required front yard. That C2 zoning is either adjacent to or across the street from a residential zone. Now, we have asked, give us something that says this is not true. We've received nothing. The only thing that they've been able to come up with is these code sections that work in perfect harmony with one another. What do you have against it? What do you have to prove this is wrong? All they've been able to come up with is their recommendation as to what they think is a better interpretation. We're going back to that same bromide that we deal with every time. When the code doesn't support what they're saying, well, this is just the way we've always done it. This is what we think is a better interpretation. In this case, it's some convoluted idea as to, well, we think we just need more buffer in between two commercial zones. You've got commercial and residential. We need to have a buffer zone. That's inapplicable here. There's no commercial, but there's no residential zoning within an eighth of a mile of this place. Nonetheless, they adamantly refused to change their position. We went through this with the temporary fence. They're correct. We talked for a long time on this. A lot of the time while they say they were accommodating us, I was going back and forth with them saying, your interpretation of this temporary fence code is wrong. There's nothing about this temporary fencing in your code section that tells us we can't have it. So what ended up happening? A massive rewrite relating to fences. That rewrite was so clearly directed at what the Colemans were doing. I've jokingly referred to it as the Coleman Amendment. And I give kudos to staff for recognizing at that point that that code section was so poorly drafted, it had to be redone. It had to be redone to correct the errors that existed within the text of the document. Now it got straightened out. Now, the point was made we didn't show up when they were discussing those code amendments. No need. We'd already been told that our fencing was going to go according to the pre-amendment code section. So we didn't need to be there. But at least the staff recognized they had a problem and they fixed it. Inexplicably, they decided this time to get their heels. No, I don't care what the code says about having a building to have a yard. We don't think that's the case. How are people supposed to have any consistency, any ability to anticipate what they're going to come up against if the text of your municipal code is ignored? That's not fair. It's not fair to them at all. So here we stand. As you said, an enormous amount of money has been spent trying to enforce an erroneous reading of your own code sections. And now we hear we got development going on. We're going to have a beautification project. We're going to have wine tasting. We're going to have a restaurant. Is that restaurant going in on Roosevelt? I don't think so. I mean, you wine tasting on Roosevelt? Roosevelt's a dead-end street. All it does is go to P&L. The only people that go down there are people going down to buy mulch or building equipment, or my clients, or maybe one or two houses that are down there on the south side of Roosevelt. And yet we're here having this huge fight. And the fight is precipitated on an obstinate refusal to recognize that your code section pretty clearly defines what a yard is and how a setback requirement fits into that scheme. And so here we are. Again, my clients don't want to do anything. They just want the code followed. And if it's not right, fix it. There's no shame in that. Just redo it. Nobody's going to think badly of you for that, but at least acknowledge it. There's a principle in contract law, contra pro ferendum. Probably doesn't really apply in the circumstance, but it's worth noting. Contra pro ferendum is Latin for contrary to the proffering party. And what that means is, if you have an agreement that's ambiguous, that ambiguity is going to be construed against the person who drafted the contract. They wrote it. It's ambiguous, it's their fault. If there's ambiguities here that are requiring this strain of a reading that just basically pulls stuff out of the air to say this is how we think this should be interpreted, that's not the applicant's fault. That's not the Coleman's fault. That's the city's fault. They're the ones that have to fix it. Ambiguities that they put in the municipal code should not be construed against a citizen. Because the goal of this stuff is to improve and protect the safety, the welfare, and the morals of the city and the citizenry. How is that setback at the end of Roosevelt improving the safety, the health, the welfare of the morals of the citizens of Escalon? It's not. My clients have wasted money. The city has wasted money for no other purpose than to simply push an erroneous reading of your own code.
So, Mr. Dickerson, you're okay with the frontage being on Roosevelt, you just don't like the front yard concept because there's no yard.
I'm
And
not pulling that out of the air.
what if the sidewalk was built, like say going back to Main Street past the residences on, and up by, is your fence in the way where you propose to put it, or can the sidewalk be put?
No.
Your fence is not in the way?
I don't believe so. It was made, about the letter that we got. Mr. Velasquez, 20 feet off the edge of the roadway. She went out and measured it. It was supposed to put it at 23 feet off the edge of the roadway. Now that probably goes back to an issue as to whether or not the road sits in the exact center of what is the road right away. But nonetheless, she was going according to what she thought it was supposed to be. She went 23 feet. I struggle to find where it's needed for that setback to be where it is, that this fight has gone as long as it's gone. I'm still waiting to hear something that goes against our position. Nothing.
How do you feel about the gate on First Street? Are you okay with removing that and changing?
Well, the gate on First Street is there because we got right away across Mr. Grossi's property. That was negotiated during the time that the sales were going through. So that gate is there, consistent with a right of way that we have. We're not asking for a new entrance. That's consistent with a right of way that we have across Mr. Grossi's property. It allows access. This has been there for years and years and years.
What about the aesthetics of the people are coming down First Street to go downtown, both sides of the street, we've got beautification that has taken place and that is currently taking place, and then we've got a slatted cyclone fence.
It's interesting that you bring that up. When we were at the property talking about whether kind of a fence we were going to put up, we suggested, and again, we didn't have to put up a fence, we thought a slat was pretty nice. Looks okay. And they said, well, we're not too sure about that. So we literally stood on Roosevelt and pointed, well, there's a city lot, there's a city property that's got a slatted fence. fence. And we see a slatted fence all the way along the railroad tracks. And here's another slatted fence. They're all over the place. But apparently, it's okay if it's the city.
Well, or behind the scenes where main traffic is.
Exactly, but these were not behind the scenes. People can see them wherever they are. Aesthetically, apparently, a slatted fence is ugly when it's on private property, but it's just fine when it covers and encircles city property. And it's probably no coincidence that when that fencing amendment was done, they specifically said no more slatted cyclone fence except around city property. So under those circumstances, the whole aesthetic argument is a red herring. It's a red herring. It's good, fine. Police station, no problem. Down at the end of Roosevelt, on the dead end street, suddenly this offends the sensibilities of the viewer. No. Doesn't hold water. And this is why my clients wonder sometimes if they're being singled out.
What's the use currently thought of for that piece of property?
Right now, I'm not planning on doing anything. The cost of trying to do anything was prohibitive. And it's not the cost of whether we could recapture their money. The cost associated with the uncertainty of applying for anything with the city was just, it's not worth it. Not even going to try at this point. We had to get a special use permit or conditional use permit if we wanted to put an RV park on, because it didn't go with the zoning. But the zoning would allow us to slap a convalescent home back up against the railroad tracks. That's fine. Nursery school, no problem. No sweat. They weren't paying a lot of attention, with all due respect, when they don't have a piece of property. So this is the problem that we have. Follow your code. Your code's right there. If you got it, I'm open to it. If anybody's got anything that says we're wrong in your municipal code, point it out. Point it out. And they haven't done it. So really, you're kind of faced with a choice here. You can have your zoning enforced according to what your municipal code says. Or you can have it enforced according to the arbitrary, capricious whim of whoever it is that's going out there to make the call. And I don't think you want the latter. That's all I got. If anybody's got any questions, I'm here.
So, Mr. Dickerson, what's your interpretation of my previous statement where I said that it almost appears as if the city explained to your client that put your fence here and the fence wasn't.
Okay, you put it up in the wrong place. You put it up in the wrong place.
Okay.
Now if it's wrong and you do it, I guess we'll have to move it. Okay. Where is it supposed to go under the code? Unless you want to go against the code as a punitive measure against him because he may have put the fence up in the wrong place.
So it sounds to me almost as if the city was working with your client to say, put the fence here, yeah, everything's here. It was installed incorrectly, and now, because your client doesn't want to move the fence because of an interpretation of the municipal code, your client is almost saying to the city, well, we installed it wrong, but now we're going to interpret your municipal code to suit our benefit. So we're not going to touch the fence. We're going to leave it as is.
Your timing is wrong. I was telling them their interpretation of the code was wrong well before you put those posts in.
I don't agree with that.
Oh, yeah.
I don't agree with the timing like that.
So explain to me what you just said. I'm sorry, I looked
Well,
at
your question assumed the fact it's not necessarily an evidence, and that is that I had not raised the issue of the setback requirements prior to the fence being put in the incorrect location, okay? No, she contests me on this, okay? But it is my recollection that I was already beginning to tell them not only through the city, but primarily through the attorneys, because once I know the representatives primarily communicate with the attorneys, that their interpretation of the setbacks were incorrect.
Well, with all due respect, Mr.
No, that's fine. You don't have to even be respectful. That's fine.
No, I want to be
No,
respectful.
that's good.
90, I don't know, I'll go crazy. I would say 98 to 99% of all development in the city, if there's an issue, Public Works, city engineer, our planners, even the city manager, if there's a question, the city wants to work with residents. They want to work with businesses. So if the city took the time to come out and say, hey, put your posts here, and that was all, or everybody knows the municipal code, and your client chose to do something otherwise, our fallback position is always, why didn't you just pay attention to the city?
Well, again, it comes back to my question. If we in fact determine that the city's location was wrong, what do we do about that? Now,
That's my point.
Exactly.
You're making the municipal code suit your client's needs as opposed to what the city has done for 50 years.
Incorrect. Incorrect. What we're not making the city municipal code fit my client's needs.
Okay.
What we're doing is we're making my client's needs fit your municipal code. There's a fundamental difference there.
Okay.
We're not interpreting it in an erroneous manner in order to accommodate what my client did. What we're saying is your municipal code is very clear and your staff was wrong in how they interpreted it. Now, do I wish I could go back and not put those things up? She went out and measured, she thought they were putting it in the right place. Would I be able to go back if I could and say, geez, don't do it, don't put them up anywhere else, let's wait and get this thing resolved before we do anything? Well, that didn't happen. But what I think you're saying is, even though it was put up in the wrong place, or even though the city was wrong, if the city told them to put it there, albeit in an incorrect location, and my client didn't do so, well, he needs to be punished for that. And so we're going to allow that fence to remain according to an incorrect setback. I don't think that's the purpose of the commission.
Well, I'm not saying that. So I know we don't know each other, but I'm a construction manager.
Mm-hmm.
And so I've dealt with contractor errors, owner errors on multiple projects.
Sure, happens.
And when I go up to a project and if I see something was installed incorrectly, as the construction manager, it's not my responsibility to pay for that error to be reworked or rebuilt. That burden is on the contractor. And so if your client, if the city came out and said, put it here, and it wasn't put there, and it was put in the wrong spot, all it would have taken was putting the fence in the right spot, and we wouldn't even be talking today. I mean, is that correct?
Stacy Coleman.
Yeah, so
I did go out there and tell the guys to put the post there after I measured with a letter that we had received from Tammy Alcantar in hand saying 20 feet was the setback. But in one of our several meetings out there with Tammy Alcantar and other city people, after somebody had called and reported that we were putting a fence up that they weren't happy with, we were told that if we put the fence where we put it, it would be okay at 30 inches because that's a front yard. But if we intended to do a 7-foot fence, it had to be 8 more feet back. So we didn't necessarily put it in the wrong place. We put it where we wanted it because we were arguing that there was the setback, that it's some sort of 35-foot setback or something is what they're actually want, which, by the way, does not match up to the corner post of our rental house further down on Roosevelt and is in the middle of the building that Mr. Grossi has on the other side. So they're telling us that our sidewalk, the street's gonna come down and go in and then come back out. If we do the setback the way they have it measured. So what we're arguing here is 30-foot fence or 7-foot fence. If it's 30 foot, 30 inches, I'm sorry, we can have it where it is, according to what they told us on site. But if it's 7 foot, because they say that's a front yard, it has to be 8 feet back.
So why not just make the fence 30 inches?
Because we don't want it 30 inches, we're trying to keep people out. And with caution tape and posts, we can't even keep people out.
Have you attempted to contact Escalon PD?
Yes, we have, and as a matter of fact, the district attorney is still researching our claim as to whether or not they want to proceed with criminal offenses against a truck that parked in there. And the police officer from the city told us, he's just trying to do his job, why don't you leave him alone?
So have you had a conversation with the chief of police and say,
I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but I have called the police department and been told by the girl that works in the front office that they're still trying to get the district attorney to do something about it. And last week, a city vehicle, there were several of them, were working on a water pipe in front of our property. And one of the city vehicles had driven over the tape. It was down, I'm not saying he took it down, and driven through where our gate on Roosevelt would be into our property to park. And there's plenty of room to park in front of where the fence would be off of the street. We can't keep anybody out. So we want to put a decent fence up just until such time as we can figure out what to do with the property.
well, I don't know about you, Ms. Coleman, but the last thing I want to do is put something up and have to reinstall it later on.
It's not a matter of installing, it's a matter of cutting it off.
Okay.
I mean, that's all there is to it. So,
It's just
no,
the entire fence is not. It's the posts were up, and that's when we stopped, and we decided we were going to appeal this.
So for clarification, city staff was out there, identified the spot of the location, marked the poles, and then the contractor installed additional poles. And they were told that typically the 15-foot setback when there is not already a sidewalk installed is approximately 20 feet, approximately. But in this instance, there is another curb that had been poured that identifies where the sidewalk will go along that roadway. And that's where we base the 20 feet off of. And we actually met them out there with the engineer, identified all of that, of how that 20 feet was established. And they agreed with how we established it at that time. But the posts were already in.
Incorrect. We did not agree with where you said it was supposed to go. We said we agreed with how you took the measurements.
That's correct.
Okay, we agreed with how you did the measurements. We did not agree that that was where it's supposed to go.
I'm sorry, that's what, you're correct.
Yeah.
I was stating that you understood how we established where the 15-foot.
Exactly. And that's when we had the discussion regarding there's no good engineer. How can you have it hard? I mean, this meeting with the engineer, it really got down into some pretty esoteric stuff. We were sitting there talking about bearings and differences in bearings between the edge of the street and the center line of the street and how that would throw certain things off. I mean, we were getting really off into the weeds at this point. But it still comes down to, do the setback requirements contained in 17.40.030B apply to this property? Everything in your code section says no.
But if the measurement, if there's a curve, I mean, let's boil it down to common sense. There's a curve. And the city says, see this curve? There's going to be a sidewalk coming off of around here sometime in the future. And they measure from the back of the curve to this area, and that's how they measure the setback because we're looking down the future, not right now.
But it's not the measurement of where the setback is. It's the application of the setback that they are disagreeing with. So staff looks at the code and says, it doesn't matter whether it would be the front yard, the backyard, the side yard. It says that all of those would be subject to the setback. Therefore, Roosevelt, First Street, because they're adjacent to a roadway, are subject to the 15-foot setback. Their argument is that they don't have a yard, they don't have a front yard, they don't have a side yard, they have a vacant lot. And so that vacant lot is not subject to the setbacks. And that is what their appeal is on this.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chair, I'm sorry I'm belaboring this point. But if the city's interpretation is that the code, the reference for the setback is the road, and their interpretation is of a yard, I think that's the crux of the issue. So does the setback come from the road, or does that come from a yard? Is that correct?
No. Well, so the code reads that, and sorry, I gotta try and put my glasses on and not fog up. That in section 17.41.30 prohibits installing walls or fences within 15 feet of a street in a non-residential zone. And that's not the code itself. So let me find that directly, sorry.
But they were going to the edge of the street and then they were adding that 15 feet when they were deciding where that post had to go, because that's what they were going on. We have to have 15 feet, so they go.
But if the reference to the code says street, why is the city interpreting it as a street and you're interpreting it as a yard?
No. You have to do both. Because what you're doing is they're coming a certain distance off the street, okay, in order to establish where the end of the sidewalk. I think the edge of the sidewalk is going to go, okay. Then what change up having to do is you've got to go 15 feet back from that because you have a front yard setback. So that extra 15 feet is the crux of the matter. We're saying we don't need that extra 15 feet because there's no yard. She pretty much, Michelle Camper pretty much hit the nail on the head what the issue is.
And okay, now I have one more question.
Let me ask Tammy a question really quick. Tammy?
Yes.
The edge of the sidewalk that is not towards the street, that butts up to the property line?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So from the property line, we're basically saying the setback goes back 15 feet from the property line. Forget the street, forget the road, forget the yard, from the property line. 15 feet back?
Well, the code doesn't define it from the property line. The code defines it.
I understand that. I'm trying to do this as a visual thing. You know, so from the property line, it's 15 feet back, correct?
Well, it's close, but I mean, sometimes the sidewalk falls on the property.
So sometimes the sidewalk encroaches on
Property.
It's in the public right of way, so it's it's on the private property, but because it's in the public right of way.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, can I go back to my question? Because
Sure.
I'm looking at the photos, okay? Staff, can you go to the photos?
Which one?
This one. There's caution tape going along Roosevelt. So are you guys saying that the Keep going.
Well, that's not,
No, other way.
that's what they put in. Yeah.
Keep going.
Might be in the additional.
Yeah, additional photos, I'm sorry.
Very bad.
11:48 is the time.
Right, those,
These ones?
keep going down. One more. One more, there you go. So is the crux of the issue, those posts right there, are we saying that those
Yes.
posts,
That's the post, those are the posts right there.
Yes.
okay?
No, I think it's the ones on the next page.
No.
No.
So those posts in the
Oh, that's
previous
not-
picture, those
that's not
posts
visible.
are placed within what would be the 15-foot right, or 15-foot setback, excuse me.
Okay. So, and again, boiling it down to my idiocy, if you will, staff is measuring from the edge of the road back 15 feet.
We're measuring from where the back of the sidewalk would be when installed, 15 feet.
Okay. And Mr. Dickers, or the Coolmans are measuring,
But it doesn't matter what we're measuring from. That's not the question here. The question is whether it is subject to the 15-foot setback. Because in 1741.030B, in all other zoning districts, no walls or fencing is permitted within a required front yard, side yard, adjacent to a street or alley, or that portion of a required rear yard within 15 feet of a street or alley where adjacent to the side yard, except a wall or fence no higher than 30 inches may be constructed to screen parking lots.
okay, so then staff is saying if you want to keep those posts, they need to be 30 inches. And you guys are saying, no, we want to keep it 7 feet to keep people out. Correct.
Yes, and they're saying it has to be 30 inches because you're within the setback. We're saying we can have it at 7 feet because it's not within the setback.
Because it's not subject to the setback, because it is a vacant lot and it does not have a defined yard.
So Tammy, how does other proposed developments establish setbacks if there's no buildings on them based on the applicant's argument? How do you establish a setback on a vacant lot if you can't get a setback or a yard until you have a building on it? How do you know what those setbacks are if there's no buildings? And
So in this case, it's regardless whether it's a front yard, a side yard, if it's adjacent to a street or an alley, then it's subject to the setback. So in this case, it doesn't matter that there's not a building with a defined yard.
Yeah.
Because it's adjacent to the street.
Oh,
Seem to be going around and around and around and around in circles here.
Mr. Chair, I just want to say one last thing. This is it, I'm done. So, we say, okay, yeah, you're right, leave the fence where it is. And the fence stays as is. The minute that you guys have a planned project and you bring before a plan to the planner or the planning commission, immediately you're gonna rip that fence out because the city is gonna make you put in a sidewalk. And now you're within the 15 feet, correct?
They can put the sidewalk in now.
Yeah, we can put the sidewalk in now. You see that picture you're looking at there? And Stacy, correct me if I'm wrong. Those posts that are in that my client put in order to go over to where the city is, want them to be, you don't have to go back 15 feet. You have to go back about 8. Okay? We didn't use up that entire 15 feet. We're back 7 feet out of that 15 feet that they want. So the chances that we're going to have to rip that thing out, unless, pardon me for saying so, they want to be punitive over this whole thing later on down the line when we choose to develop. It's not going to be in the way of sidewalk. You're not going to have to take the fence up to put sidewalks in. That sidewalk is probably, I'm gonna guesstimate, okay, don't hold me to this, I'm just guesstimating. I'm gonna guess that sidewalk's probably gonna be, the fence as it exists is probably gonna be 4 or 5 feet behind the sidewalk.
But then you don't meet the municipal code,
Oh, municipal code.
the setback requirement that we're talking about.
No, what we would do is when we did that conditional use permit or applied for something, we would say we've already got a fence up, just like everybody else who's got their fence inside of that 15 feet that we provided the pictures to. We showed all of those pictures and they said, well, when they did the development, they addressed it at that point. So that's why they get to have their fence within, inside that 15 feet. They got backed up within 2 or 3 feet of the sidewalk. So that's what we would be doing at that point. We'd be asking for the same concessions that everybody else has received in the past. Because when we asked about that, well, when they did the development, they got the okay. We're not in any position to talk about that because we don't know. So we got all these other places that have fences within 3 or 4 feet of the sidewalk. But there again, at the end of Roosevelt,
But you were told that you could come to the planning commission and ask for a variance on that.
well, of course, we just don't think we need a variance because the code says we don't
Right.
have it.
Mr. Chair, this is Mark Velasquez. Maybe it might be helpful to see if there's any other public comments on this.
Yeah.
Sure.
The other individual would like to speak in favor of it, and if I may ask that we can keep the comments to like 5 minutes.
Yes, Larry Grossi, 1455 First Street. I just want to clarify, some of the things that have been said about this fence, especially the timing of this fence. I approached Mrs. Kuhlman back when early October about, when she was out looking where some of the markers were, property line markers. And I had went over there to help her find one of the property line markers on Roosevelt. And I had just made a comment, you're marking this out. I just asked what she possibly might be doing. And she had made a comment that they were going to be putting up a fence. Okay, I said, oh, okay. What kind of fence are you guys putting up, if you don't mind me asking? She said that we're going to be putting up a cyclone fence. And I go, oh, are you looking at possibly doing a cost share on this fence? And she goes, yeah, maybe, not sure. I said, okay, well, if you guys are interested, send me a proposal and I might look at the cost share. I said, I would also like to propose possibly putting up a block wall fence, like we've done in a couple of the other properties there that we're doing. I never heard anything back. The next thing I heard was there was holes being dug and there was problems with the holes that were being dug. They were on our property. It wasn't a common fence. We didn't agree to putting the fence on the property line. So I made the comment that they should go down, talk to the city, and make sure that they understand where the fence needs to go. And that's all I'm going to say. So that's all I got to say.
Thank you. Any other comments from the audience? Is there anybody in the audience against this project that would like to speak? Any more comments from the councilmen? Of the planning commissioners?
Mr. Chair, I would like to hear from Mr. Velasquez.
Mr. Velasquez, would you like?
Well, I'd be under, not under public comment. I'm more staff than that. So if we're still in the public hearing.
Sure, okay.
I'll respond after the public hearing's closed.
Okay. Any other comments from anybody before I close the public hearing and bring it back to discussion to the commissioners? hearing closed. Mr., would you like to speak?
Well, I was just about to escape the fire here. Thank you for committing. No, so here's my concern. I am not at this point. I am representing the city. I have a position to take. I'm not neutral. I guess that to get to the point here, if this commission is looking to question or my assistance as a neutral, I'm not it. I've been assisting the staff. I'm representing the city's position. And I think staff has done a good job of indicating their position. So I guess I'm going to put it back to you, Commissioner. Are you asking for my opinion on this? Because it's really your job as the commission tonight. You're the neutral arbitrator of what's before you. If you're looking for me to point you one way or the other, I can't assist you in that regard, because my argument is for the city and the city's position. I've assisted them with their position and their interpretation. So I want to kind of make it clear. Maybe I should ask that to the commissioner that asked for me to speak. What specifically is it that you would like me to answer?
Well, before I tell you that, no offense to you or Mr. Dickerson, attorneys just drive me crazy sometimes.
No offense taken.
I would like to, no, I do not want your advice for the planning commissioner. I mean, I understand we're the neutral party here. I would like you to clearly provide a rebuttal to what Mr. Dickerson said about the interpretation of yard versus lot. And is the city municipal code, does the Escalon municipal code apply, or how does the city municipal code apply to this when there is no dwelling unit on the property? So no, I don't want you to give information to the planning commission. I would like to hear from your capacity as the city attorney in this situation.
Well, right. I mean, that's what I'm saying is the city attorney is asked to do multiple roles. My role in this at this point right now is to advocate for the staff's position, which means I'm not neutral, right? So I agree with staff in that if there's any ambiguity in the code, that their interpretation, which they've been applying consistently over the years, should prevail. Mr. Dickerson, there was a lot in their presentation. It seemed to be first they're arguing they want to comply with the code, but really their argument is the code doesn't apply, so we could put the fence, literally their 7-foot up fence, up to the side of the sidewalk if they want to. I think we all realized what their argument really was, and then they indicated at the very end, well, we're doing this, so when we do want to do something, we can then argue to the planning commission that we should be somehow grandfathered in. It's a bit disingenuous. Now, their presentation was a very technical, hyper-technical reading of the law, of the codes. They have their position and interpretation of it. I think staff's position, which was, it doesn't matter whether it's a front yard, side. In this situation, it doesn't matter whether it's a front or side yard. Obviously, I'm arguing the staff's position, which is just, if there doesn't have to be a building, there is a yard, and it doesn't matter in this situation whether it's front, side, or anything, because there's that 15-foot setback. They are arguing opposite. Mr. Dickerson argued a lot about interpretation, and our interpretation is that the setback does apply. And the purpose of it, of course, and why this has been, they imply that we're fighting this for no good reason. the city staff applies the laws equally. They're trying to do this equally. If Mr. Grassi was back on, he would explain how we've worked with him just like we've worked with everybody. The city staff has, and they're trying to apply the laws consistently and their interpretations consistently. I'm sorry, that's a very lawyerly, roundabout way to answer your question, Commissioner.
That's actually good attorney speak.
Do I get to respond to anything?
Only if the chair opens up a public
Can we
hearing.
continue the meeting, Mr. Chairman?
Excuse me?
I think we've heard all the arguments that we need to have. You've closed the public hearing. I'd like to hear discussion from the commission if you're in favor of that, so we can move forward.
That was my next step, is bring it back to the commission for discussion. So who would like to go first? John? Get your comments?
I know my job is, as a planning commissioner, is to follow the municipal code, but I also know that when I drove down First Street and saw the fence, I looked over and I nerved, and for all due respect, because the Coleman's, I looked over and I said, who the hell approved something like that? I don't necessarily think it's up to, I guess my whole point in all of this, and with this is something the planning commission continues to talk about over and over and over and over again, is that if you have an idea, if you have a thought, come to the planning commission, let's talk about it, let's figure out a solution together. And in my opinion, right now, the city is wasting countless hours on staff time, wasting countless hours on attorney's fees. The Colemans are wasting their time, their attorney's fees, when really, if you can go back and look on the record and see, we constantly have asked over the last few months, what's going on with the Colemans? What's going on with the Colemans? And even the planning commission was left in the dark. And so I'm of the opinion that we deny the appeal.
Okay. Mark, comment?
Yeah, as Commissioner Sarkozy here. Yeah, boy, that was a lot to take in. Good discussion. I certainly understand, from the city's perspective and the lot owner's perspective, the Colemans, ultimately nobody's perfect, and I'm trying to be a neutral a neutral party here, but I just can't help but think that every effort was made to help put this fence in the appropriate spot, and it wasn't. I also, I question, it's not, and I'm not I'm not a construction estimators, but two things come to mind when I look at this fence or what it would look like in the future. Is it's not, I can't imagine it's terribly expensive, but it's still a cost. I understand if it has to move, and then likewise, if and when something is built there, I can't say for sure, but I would think that there would possibly have to modify that fence just to get access to the site somehow with some materials. So, and I could be totally wrong. I'm just thinking there. So I'm also of the mindset to deny the deny the appeal. Thank you.
Okay. Kurt, you have any opinions?
Yeah, thank you, Chair Castellano. This is a vacant lot. We don't need a fence. If there's a problem with vehicular traffic on it, you know, you can put up those traffic diverters. You can do all kinds of different things. When you put up a fence, like is being proposed here, it would suggest to me that there's some plans in the works of what you want to do with that vacant lot. I haven't heard any. And I think based on the Coleman's experience with the city, when they put all of the metal on that property in a private deal with Randy at the lumber yard, that they did so without consulting the city. And the city, like this project, gains no tax basis for it. If there were heavy traffic on that road, it would deteriorate Roosevelt. There's no consideration for city infrastructure here or the city process. So I would like to have heard more what they plan on doing here, but I don't think right now there is a plan. So at this portion, I would reject the appeal.
Barbara?
A couple of thoughts. Picturing the buildings in the area, the old lumberyard building, the mill. These buildings are over 100 years old. The neighborhood has got older homes on it. Things may not comply with city codes as they are now. I don't know how many feet off Roosevelt the front of the mill is, or say the front of the lumberyard off of First Street. But so maybe a little relaxation is warranted. On the other hand, if I go into a bakery and I order an apple pie, and the next day I go in and they give me a peach cobbler because they ran out of apples, that's not what I wanted. And if these people were told to put their fence in a certain place, that's what they should have done. And I'm not sure, if they don't know the plan for the area, you've got, what, 8 feet by a couple hundred feet extra to that property, and they don't know whether they need it or not. I don't see why we can't make them take that fence, take those fence posts down, put the fence up where they were told to put it. So yes, I'm in favor of denying the appeal.
After reading the staff report and listening to the comments of both the staff and the applicant, I would have been hopeful that there would have been some mutual agreement to try to get some resolution done to try to satisfy the applicant and still be within compliance of our municipal code. Unfortunately, that has not happened. And unfortunately, like others have said, both sides have spent probably a lot of money that could be used elsewhere and trying to defend their positions. First Street, has been in the process for some time on trying to improve its looks. With the Grossi development, that is a great step in the right direction with the improvement of Prospect that used to be a gravel pitted nightmare to get from First Street to Roosevelt has been improved. I'm hoping that the applicant will have some sort of development plans that will increase the enhancement of Roosevelt, which, in the past was not one of the most desirable streets in our community, and it's being upgraded. I too am not in, I am too in favor of denying this application under the grounds that it didn't seem like the applicant was willing to compromise at all, and then in some instances defied what the city was asking them to do.
Mr. Chair, I would like to make a motion to deny the appeal of for application 20737. I'm sorry, 20736, which is The appeal of the city planners and city's enforcement of the setback requirements for the community commercial zoning district, applying to fencing, hedges, walls, etc.
Do I hear a second?
I'll second.
Any comments? Okay, have a vote. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Just as a postscript, it was brought up that we redid some ordinance. We're constantly looking at the code, constantly evaluating whether anything needs to be reworded or supplemented or changed due to things going on in the community and in the world. So maybe we need to look at different parts of the code to see if there are any changes that are needed, any updates. Clearer language, I don't know.
Okay, on to item number 4. It's application 2737. The property is at 525 Main Street, Escalon. This is for an application requesting approval of an enhanced wall signage for the show off motorsports. May I have a staff report, please?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So we saw Show Off Motorsports here at Planning Commission in July of 2019, where they went for a conditional use permit to operate a custom vehicle accessory sales and installation shop, and they do a powder coating booth for parts. The business has been utilizing temporary signs until they figured out their final signage plan, and they're here before us tonight for their final signage. The business owner has utilized city signs for the installation of their signage. They submitted a sign permit later last year. And staff reviewed the signage and saw that the letter height and square footage of signage exceeded what the municipal code allows. And so there are provisions in the code for enhanced signage to go a little bit above. And Planning Commission has to approve that, and that would allow them to increase their letter height and sign area. Draft sign plans, it says Exhibit B. I just want to correct that. It is Exhibit C, the draft sign plans. So there's 3 signs being proposed for the building. Sign 1 is located on the northeast side of the building. That's the one that you see from Highway 120, Jackson Main Street area. They're proposing a letter height of 35 inches, whereas the code allows up to 26 inches. So they're 9 inches over what the standard code allows. Planning Commission has authorized letters larger than 26 inches in the past when the signs meet the findings in EMC 1742060E2 attached as Exhibit D. So the code says that we can go up to 26 inches, but in the past, Planning Commission has allowed bigger as long as it meets the findings. And the largest ones that I could find were approved was the Ace Hardware project, where their letters on the front of the building were 60 inches. Also, the sign code is currently under review for updates. That's been to Planning Commission before and been discussed. And one of the items that is being looked at for a change is increased letter height allowances. Sign number 2 is located on the primary business frontage. This is the main entrance to the building off the parking lot. The largest letter size is 26.4 inches, which is just barely above the 26 inches allowed by code. And sign number 3 is located on the southwest side of the building. This is what kind of the back of the building where the railroad tracks are, or where the Grossi development is. You would see it from back there. This side of the building, it's not considered a business frontage when it comes to signage. And so the sign area allowed on non-business frontages is fairly small. They would only be allowed 46 square feet of signage. and they're proposing 84 square feet of signage. Their letter height on the backside is fine. It's not larger than the 26 inches. So in summary, the applicant is requesting enhanced signage in the following areas. Sign number 1, increase letter height from 26 to 35. Sign number 2, increase letter height from 26 to 26.4. And sign number 3, increase the sign area to 84 square feet. The proposed signage does not conflict with the required findings. Therefore, staff does recommend approval of this sign permit application. Appropriate public outreach was done, notice in the newspaper, mailed to everyone within 300 feet. Staff did not get any calls or comments, concerns about the signage. Planning Commission decision tonight starts the 10 business day appeal period, which expires on January 27th. Staff recommends approval of the application. Planning Commission would open the public hearing, take public testimony, close the public hearing, make the findings, find the project, CEQA exempt, authorize staff to file the notice of exemption, and staff recommending approval of the sign permit. Under specific conditions, staff has been working with the sign contractor, City Signs, just to ensure that the lighting is appropriate and that it's not going to reflect in a way that it's not supposed to, that it meets municipal code requirements for glare, visible light, that sort of thing. The applicant is on the go-to meeting. If you have any questions for the applicant or if you have any questions for staff, I'm here.
Any questions for staff at this time?
Not here.
Not here.
No, none from me.
Negative.
Okay. Let's open the public hearing. Please state your name.
Can you guys hear me? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Hey, this is William Meckelberg from Show Off Motorsports. I was just making sure you guys like that signage, and if you guys like it or not, that'd be awesome. I'm definitely growing in town, and I want to make the building look nicer. It doesn't look the nicest right now, but true signs would definitely make the main street right there look a little better instead of a older sheet metal building, you know what I mean? And trying to do it all by the book and all the right way, and I'm hoping that you guys approve this setup here, and we'll see what happens. But I appreciate your time, and I know it's getting late, and sometimes we can have some good news in these bad times. Maybe we can make something happen. But thank you.
You're welcome.
That's all I got.
Any questions for the applicant?
Not related to his sign, Mr. Chair, but William, the hell's business?
You know what? It's fantastic. I live 4 miles away. My daughter goes to school around the corner, like I told you when I first came there, and I went to school in Escalon. So being at home, working at home, being that close is awesome, and we're killing it. I mean, I have trucks coming from Arizona, Texas, all over the country. We ship stuff daily. It gets a little hectic around there. I try to keep it on point, but it's awesome. I hope I'm bringing plenty of revenue. I hope you guys see it. We're doing great things over here.
That's really good to hear.
Well, you guys always flex a little extra for me, and I appreciate that. It's because you guys let me in town, so this is what we're going to do. We'll work together.
That's what we try to do.
I have a question. In regards to the signs, sir, and I'm sorry, my phone is really cutting in and out. The applicant's name is?
I go by William, but you can call me Billy.
Okay, well, Billy.
Yep.
You're requesting an enhanced sign size.
Yes.
Why?
Because my building is 20,000 square feet, and I had a lot of renderings done of the signage on the building, and I truly believe that the small letters, it's just kind of what I have on there temporarily right now. And it's about a foot bigger, I know, on one of the signs, but that's like the main traffic sign on 120, and they're nice signs, the LED light, not going to shine in the road or just like the glowing light. and I just want to be seen there. I have a lot of people come out of town and they're looking for my signs in Escalon, and that's why that one is the most important one on that side, is the largest.
Okay. On the railroad side of the building, I drove all around this a couple times. Really, the only spot that you can see that side of the building is from a very small section on Weiss going towards McHenry. And
Right.
so it's not, a sign there would probably enhance the side of a gray battleship building. But it faces a couple of residences. How bright is that light going to be?
So the sign on the back of the building on the railroad side, I'm trying to cover the 3 holes up, so that one's not light. And then the one sign, which would be where Chevron is, that's the biggest, brightest one. That would be not very bright at all. It's just more like an illuminated sign. It's not like light coming off of it. It's just like plexiglass with LEDs behind it. So not like street light signs. It's just gonna glow.
Okay. I was reading through this, and I was really thinking, I don't know, what they're talking about. So thank you for clarifying for me.
Oh yeah, no problem.
I'm done.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a couple of things. When you make a sign, you make the letters a certain size to be visible based on the speed of traffic going by. And so I wondered if that was taken into account when these signs were devised to be this big of a sign and this size of lettering.
Right. The reason also for the big signs is, like you just said, people driving by to really see it. The signs that I have on there that I put up to get by Diana helped me out with that, just so I know they know I'm there. They still don't see them, especially in the evening. It gets dark earlier, but that's why I wanted to do the big sign on that side, was for the light. For people who drive fast there, they might catch their eye. When the stoplights come on, of course they're going to see us, but people kind of cruise down that road right there until they get into the curves by Napa. You know what I mean?
Well, and you mentioned somebody coming from Arizona. Do you pull traffic from the roads, or do they come into town looking for you?
Oh no, just like online and then our reputation, people come all the way that far. They drove it over here, and I did the work on the vehicle, and then I have them transported usually out when I'm all finished with them, wherever they live at. That last one just left Arizona, and then I have one from Texas at the shop right now. I encourage you guys to come by and see what we do if you're ever in the area, and come find me. I'm there all the time. That's my life.
And Billy, refresh my memory. Is this your only location, or is this a logo that you have for other locations, or?
I had multiple locations throughout the years. Like, I've been in Riverbank and Modesto at the same time. I was started in Oakdale in 04, but what I did was I closed all my locations just because I'm kind of a luxury item, and today you can never be so sure on the world, So I have 10 employees, and I have them all come there, all one location now, and we I want to say downsides, but we really just kind of stuffed it all in one big building.
And those are all under the same name, so the name is known?
Yes, so Show Off Motorsports Corporation is my corporation, and then we have our powder coating and our online store and all that stuff is under one umbrella, yes.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Hi, this is Commissioner Sarkozy. That's great to hear, Billy. I might take you up on that and have a ask for a tour one of these days. And
yes.
Just not so much about the signs, but I just want to just say my appreciation to every time I've ever gone by, it is always. The parking lot is clean. It's there's a lot of trucks there, which is good for business, but it's always in, it doesn't look run down at all. It's always in tip top shape. So that was one of my concerns originally. So I really appreciate. I'm assuming you put a lot of effort into doing that, and it certainly shows. So thank you.
I appreciate that. We about once a month, I got to have a guy come in and do, clean up our pallets and get our stuff cleaned up. We have a project out back right now. It's about ready to get wrapped up. It's our company trailer that we go to trade shows in, and I'll be out of there. But as far as keeping it clean, that's important to being on that main street, and that's the the pride of Escalon, you know, downtown right there. Keeping it clean is very important. I mean, we go as far as keeping the parking lot we're allowed to use. We'll even clean that up, you know, so we're definitely appreciative of what you guys do. Thank you for that. I appreciate that.
Yeah, you've definitely enhanced the look of that building, and I think getting some lighted signage will probably enhance it more. So, and you know, this is one of the gateways into our city, and that's, you know, one of the first things you see when you're coming down 120 into Escalon. So it looks good, and it's, you know, I'm glad to hear that things are going real successful for your business, especially in these challenging times we're having. So.
Yes, thank you. We're super blessed, and just keep on doing the right thing, and they keep on coming in.
Well, obviously you're doing something right, so good
Thank
hats
you.
off to you.
Thank you.
Do you have anything else, Billy, you'd like to add?
No, everything's great. I'm just gonna keep working on extra hard, and any of my new ventures and upgrades, you guys will be hearing about them, and I'll be running them through you, of course. And Diana, like I said, she always helps me out and tells me what I need to do for my next venture. You know, eventually I'll be coming back to you guys, and maybe with this summer, you know, put out like a sitting area with some flower pots or something. You know, just something to spice it up a little bit. But we'll definitely be talking about that soon.
Great. Anybody else would like to speak regarding this application? All right, I'll close the public meeting and bring it back to the Planning Commission for discussion. Anybody would like to start off?
I'll start off. I'm not a man of few words tonight. But this is more so just an overall general comment, and that is to both Billy or William and to the building owner, Mr. Rose. I just want to, I know it took a while to get Mr. Rose to actually clean up the little building and comply with certain things, but as a condition to approval, I really want to thank Mr. Rose for taking the requirements and the conditions of approval by the Planning Commission very seriously. And especially to you, Billy, for this application, while in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't seem like a big impact, believe it or not, it's a huge impact, because this is exactly why we have the Planning Commission. This is exactly the right way to do it. You have an idea, you need a variance, you come before the Planning Commission, you express your concern, we discuss it, we vote on it, you either move forward or you move backward. And I just really want to say thank you for doing it the right way. I'm done
Thank
with
you.
my review.
Appreciate that.
I'll make a motion that we approve application 20-737 sign permit for Show Off Motorsports.
Thank
I
you.
second that.
Who second that?
Yeah.
Mark? Okay.
Can you add in the motion? Let me go back. Add in the motion. Make the findings. Yeah, make the findings and find it CEQA exempt and authorize us to file the notice of exemption.
Okay, supplement my motion with the fact applies for a CEQA class 1 categorical exemption, and
make the findings.
Make the findings.
And did you already authorize us to file the notice of exemption?
And authorize the city to file a notice of exemption.
Perfect.
And the county recorder's office.
Everything's a project.
Okay, then Mark seconded.
I still second it.
Good. So can we have a vote? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Ayes carry. Thank you, Billy. Good luck to you, and hope we see you again soon.
Thank you, guys. You have a good evening. We'll be talking soon. You guys have talk to you later.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
They're dropping like flies.
Oh, man, we're almost there. Okay,
Just wait until Commissioner Bond.
somebody was gonna say something?
I just said, you said we're almost there, and I said, just wait till Commissioner comments.
I may skip that part. Application 738, a conditional use permit on a property at 1630 Mitchell. This is the owner is requesting approval for a conditional use permit to expand an existing residential use in a commercially zoned property by constructing a 326 square foot addition to an existing home. Can I have a staff report, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, as you mentioned, this is a residential use existing on a commercial property. Therefore, the residential use is non-conforming. As we talked about earlier, properties become non-conforming for various reasons like annexation, amendments to the zoning code, or rezoning. In 1941, the 993 square foot house and 360 square foot garage were built. This is prior to city incorporation in 1957. The applicant is the new owner of the property. He intends to remodel the existing home and construct a 326 square foot addition on the north side of the house. He also plans to improve the driveway to eliminate seasonal flooding caused by incorrect drainage slopes. According to the municipal code, the applicant's required to install sidewalks along the front of the property. Due to the trees and electric pole along the frontage and the cost of the work, the applicant has requested as part of this conditional use permit that the sidewalk requirement be waived at this time. If Planning Commission does waive the sidewalk requirement, staff recommends a condition of approval that the homeowner provide the city a sidewalk easement. So in the future, if the city does a sidewalk project, it's facilitated that we already have the easement. Staff recommends approval of this conditional use permit to allow the construction of a 326 square foot addition. We don't see this project causing a hindrance to commercial development in the area. The site is surrounded by residential uses, and we see this neighborhood remaining residential for many years to come. We also appreciate the applicant's efforts to improve the property and the neighborhood. Staff did all the appropriate public outreach, advertising in the newspaper, sending the notice to property owners and occupants within 300 feet of the site, and we did not get any comments back. This Planning Commission decision begins a 10 business day appeal period, which expires on January 27th. In order for Commission to approve the application, you would open the public hearing and take public testimony, close the public hearing, make the findings for use permits, find the project CEQA exempt, authorize staff to file a notice of exemption. Planning Commission would need to consider the applicant's request to waive the sidewalk requirement and then approve the conditional use permit with the conditions of approvals proposed below. And looking at the specific conditions of approval, approval of the conditional use permit would allow the applicant to construct that 326 square foot addition to the house. And a condition of approval would be that the property owner either install the sidewalk along the property frontage or provide a recorded sidewalk easement to the city subject to the satisfaction of the city engineer. If you have any questions, the applicant is here in the audience with us, and staff is available also for questions.
Any questions from staff?
Yes, Chair. So, Ms. Triano, can you just give me some background information as to why a CUP is required by putting on an addition?
Anytime the non-conforming use is expanded, if a residence is expanded, it requires
Community commercial.
in the C2 zone, right? If it's non-conforming, so residential exists in commercial, Planning Commission has the chance to evaluate whether this property is heading towards commercial, then the CUP would probably be denied, because if you're going to spend the money to add on to the house, you're going to be there for quite some time.
Okay. That's it, Chair.
Any other questions?
Oh, if that's okay. The trees in front, does the city plant them? And then, but it's up to the property owner to maintain them? Is that correct, or?
I can't say with these specific trees, they have been there for so long. I'm not sure how it was done in the past. As it is, street trees are handled now is that the developer installs them. And this developer or the homeowner or the commercial property owner maintains them.
Okay, as you're looking at the front of the house, the left, that tree on the left, the branches go through the wires, going to and from the poles. What about undergrounding the power? Who determines when that is done?
Typically that is if like a redevelopment project was being done or new commercial is being done.
So if you've got all older home, well, no, you haven't got old homes.
It's existing.
Yeah.
For the electrical pole.
Yeah.
It's incredibly expensive as well. And so if that was conditioned to the property owner, they usually go from block to block. And so he would have to, at least at minimum, have the utilities undergrounded, probably from 120 down to the next street along Mitchell. That was one of the reasons for the project for Lear Village, that some of the utilities were not required to put underground because you can't just do it for your property. You have to meet where the lines go. And so it gets very costly unless you're doing a big project.
Okay, what about as far as sidewalks? Are there grants that can be pursued for putting in sidewalks if there's a hardship to the resident or the property owner?
Not available
For the
to homeowners, no.
themselves, not that I'm aware of.
No, what about for the city to?
Sometimes there's opportunities for like safe routes to school, that we can get some monies for. But you have to, compete for those monies. So sometimes it depends upon where that area is, how well it stacks up to what other cities in the county are doing.
But Mitchell Avenue is on our list. We are aware that that street doesn't have sidewalks. And so we have an inventory of the areas in town that don't have it. And so when we're trying to apply for those types of funding, we're taking that look at areas and trying to put projects forward that would have the higher approval rating, priority being around schools at this time.
Well, and also, if you've got a house with a sidewalk and then the next house, nothing, just dirt. And then the next house, maybe their driveway goes all the way from the curb up to the house. And then the next, you've got this intermittent thing, so people are walking in the streets, for the consistent level. So it seems like that might be an enticement to pursue something or get something. Just a thought. Okay, that's all I have, Karen.
Any other commission?
Mr. Chairman?
Yes.
Yeah. In that same vein, and I may have missed it because again, my phone's cutting in and out. Telephone poles in general, in areas where you would normally have a sidewalk. Well, what does the city do? I mean, you can't make the property owner responsible for something that is beyond their control. And, moving that pole, as we've seen in other presentations to the city council, I can remember one where there was a pole in the driveway. They couldn't park a vehicle. And, I don't know how you enforce a regular code on people when there's nothing they can do about that pole. So, if it were just the trees and the city was going to go ahead and, do sidewalks in that area there, that would be one thing, but that pole's in the way. So I think that negates any responsibility for this property owner to, be responsible for a sidewalk in the future, unless somehow that pole is going to be out of the equation. So
Well,
that's just one.
Opportunities for municipalities to work with utility companies to move poles on occasions, specifically when we're doing a project such as that.
Also, when you have an obstruction where the sidewalk would be, typically your sidewalk has to be 4 feet wide. But when you come up to an obstruction like a stop sign or a telephone pole, power pole, the width requirement reduces to 33 inches. So as long as there's 33 inches clear around the pole, that's acceptable for ADA.
Across the street, there's one pole where the cement comes right up to it. And then there's another pole where it looks like a square tree well, about 3 feet across.
So here's the kicker though. If something were to happen to that pole where that sidewalk is, PG&E would come in, rip all that concrete out, replace the pole, and then it would be the homeowner's responsibility to put the concrete back. So I know I'm not supposed to talk anymore, but I will tell you.
Well, that's all right. You can talk over me, Sean. One other statement here under the background, Diana. It says the applicant intends to improve the driveway to eliminate seasonal flooding caused by incorrect drainage slopes. How?
You'll have to, the applicant is here. We can direct that question physically what they intend to do, but my understanding is that the driveway slopes towards the house. So when it rains, the water comes right up to the foundation and causes some flooding issues. So I think it was gonna involve some regrading of that driveway. However, they're not allowed to grade it so that the water slopes to the neighbor to the south. They would have to slope it down towards the street so it can drain to the gutter.
Okay. Again, when I made my rounds for all of these applications, I went out there, and fortunately, I actually got to speak to the tenant, and he was very informative, very much likes his landlord, and apparently, due to new housing requirements for the landlord there, he's moving to the property directly behind what you're looking at there is the garage, and he told me, and I walked back there with him, that the water goes away from the house primarily towards the corner of that garage. And the garage indeed has a little berm in front of the door that moves the water to the right where the new fence is. And there's, I observed that there were tan bark bags that help direct that water. And in the past, before the fence, the water went down the side of the garage, which had also flooded, and there was a sub pump behind the rear fence on the other property that directed water to the north side of the property, where I guess it drained in or what have you. But has staff gone in and looked at that garage as far as a structure that would actually be a garage? Because it may be rotted.
Staff has not, no.
Okay, well, that was, I don't even need to speak to the applicant about that. That's something that I would think that the staff may want to do just based on the conversation that I had and observations. And that's it.
Mark, do you have any comments, questions?
No, I have nothing for right now. Thanks.
I have a question for staff. When when new sidewalks are put in, will they have to remove those? I think there's 3 trees, or would they just pour sidewalks around those trees?
The location of the sidewalk would be determined by the city engineer. Looking at other sidewalks on the street, so the engineer said that possibly the trees would have to be removed and the sidewalk be placed in your standard spot right next to the curb.
Okay.
Or, as you see with some streets, they have that little landscape strip next to the curb, and then you have a sidewalk. So where exactly that sidewalk would be located, I'm not sure. If the applicant is required to put it in, they would work with the city engineer for placement.
Yeah, and driving that property and looking at it, pouring a sidewalk in front of that house, it is going to be a challenge with everything in front of it. Okay, no other questions for staff? I will open up the public hearing. If the applicant or their representative is in the audience, would you like to address your application?
Yeah, my name is Chaba Thomas, 1630 Mitchell Avenue. I'd like to get the permit to extend that house, so one more bedroom, that's it. But the sidewalk, anytime, the city and it is okay to do it, because the three trees is huge and electric poles. Otherwise, I'm willing to do it, but this is very costly right now. I can't wait until that time comes. I'll work with you. I'm going to leave the space for the sidewalk. Anytime in the future, we can do it.
Did you hear what Commissioner Danziger said about the garage? And the bags in front, the berm in front of the garage and the water?
That is in the past. My observation is in the past, the tenant and the landlord neglect the property. And they saying is the drain broke, a lot of trees and leaves fall in and broke then the water, that side, my house and next door house, the land is too slow, so the water back up and went to the garage. Then he put a sump pump over there and drain the water. That's what they did.
So it's gonna stay that way, or?
No, I'm going to, that's in my property, that's I'm not going to stay there. So I'm going to plan different way to run the water in case that I hope this year didn't happen. So if I clean the gutter really good, it will be good.
My only comment to the applicant is thanks for hanging in there with us. It's been a long meeting. We really appreciate you hanging out.
I really want to come. I wanted to see you guys, see the face. I know Barbara, but Dave, I never seen that she was in the chair over here. So I'm gonna have to do this evening. So.
Well, thank you.
Diana said, "Don't come. You don't. You can sit home and watch it." But I said, "No, I'd like to come and see this." Thank you.
Actually, can you, Chuckle, can you do us a favor and tell us how to address Commissioner Danzinger's question as to how you're going to improve the driveway?
I have to hire a contractor and see. No, I'm not going to raise it. You don't have to raise it. The water, the street side, if we clean it, the water won't back up. As I said, the guy is, that house is a rental house. The renters, they don't care about it. And the landlord as well. So as long as when the really rainy season, the leaves fall down, just go and clean it up. That's our duty, not the weather or somebody else or city. And Mike blaming on the city put the wrong, the drain on the wrong side. That's why he put a big old bomb, but too much drama. I took everything out. I want to see where's the water coming from. I'm watching on the leaves. There's nothing happening. And if the water come in, I'm going to make it a small channel to go the water behind her and go to the property. That's all. Yeah, I get that. Thank you.
Any other questions for the applicant?
Not here.
Okay. Is there anybody else in the audience that would like to speak?
Yeah, I'm the audience.
Just Chaco.
Okay, I'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for comments and discussion and hopefully a vote.
Mr. Chair, I have no comments, but I would like to make a motion that we approve the application, or first of all, that we make the findings as required for section 17.56.030 for conditional use permits, that we find the project equal categorically exempt under section 15.332 infill development, and authorize staff to file the notice of exemption. I would like us to grant the applicant's request to waive the sidewalk requirement. Finally, we approve the conditional use permit application with the conditions of approval as proposed below, or modified, or as proposed below, period.
For the sidewalk, waiving the requirement to install it, are you including that they record the sidewalk easement for future installation?
I think that's fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's all.
I like the fact that we're making improvements on another home on Mitchell.
My job is to keep it nice and clean.
Second the motion.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, say no. Motion carried. All right.
Good night.
Good night, thank you.
Thank you, Chaco.
Thank you. All right, we're on the home stretch here. Administrative matters.
None.
None.
Yeah, no, I like that. Is there anybody in the audience?
No.
Okay, great. Skip that one. Staff communication.
So at this time, we just want to put a reminder out there that we have the workshop, a joint workshop between the Planning Commission and City Council scheduled for next Tuesday, January 19th at 6 o'clock. If any of the planning commissioners have any items of discussion or feedback or things they would like to discuss then to be agendized on there, or to at least have a heads up for staff so that we could provide that information to get that hour moving, just let us know, send Tammy or I an email, that way we're aware and can move it in that direction. We do have a developer that's looking to move forward on an 18-unit senior housing project. They are wanting to share those, give a short presentation as well on the type of project they'd be doing, because it would be a subdivision map, and I believe it's over 1 acre, so it would be a PD, it would be processed as a PD. Pleasant's property located on First Street. And so those would be included in their short presentation, just to get a feel, to make sure that they're headed in the right direction with that type of project, since it would be going through both Planning Commission and Council for approval.
Any other topics already been submitted that you know of, or?
Not yet,
No, okay.
yeah. And that's the only item I have for that.
I have nothing.
Oh, and then just as what Mark had indicated earlier, our attorney Velasquez, there is no requirement that we have to have people that come up to speak public comment to give their address, like you mentioned. So in the future, you could ask for name, but they are not required to provide their address. So
Actually, they don't even have to say their name if they don't want to. You could always ask. It doesn't hurt to ask, but you could ask for the name. Just don't be surprised someday if somebody says, "I don't have to give you my name." And it's like, okay, fine. Say what you got to say.
I've actually seen that at a Modesto irrigation agenda meeting, where that was brought up. This was like 10 years ago. And you don't have to give your address there, but they wouldn't listen to you unless you told them your name. Because they don't know who you are, and they want to know if you're from town, or where. So just to throw it in.
Okay. No more staff communication? How about commissioner communication?
I'm really happy for everybody's attendance and all the effort you put in. Mark Velasquez, I'm really glad that you're here and could help us out the way you did tonight. Hope to see
Thank
more.
you. Hopefully not too much more, right? If you need me all the time, that's a bad sign. Or maybe it's a good sign. It's busy. It means Escalon's booming. Either way, I'm happy to be on board. Someday I'll get to meet you in person. I look forward to that.
Yeah. Thank you for spending a long night with us tonight. Appreciate it.
No problem.
I figured it was going to be more contentious than it really was, so it was good. No commission committee.
Mr. Chair.
So I can actually join them in this meeting.
Now, hold
No,
on.
I'd like to say something.
Yeah.
Well, let's go down the line there.
I can't hear what you're saying, Kurt.
I said, why don't we just go down the line and ask?
Okay. Kurt?
Thank you. First off, I'd like to commend staff for all the work that they did on this agenda. Combining two agenda nights into one was no small feat. Number two, my binder's getting out of date with all of the changes to the zoning ordinance. Are you guys keeping pages that we need to replace up to date so that at some point we can do it? I read my binder, and I was looking at some comments as an example under the Kuhlman thing, and there was a idealized comments by the staff that actually didn't show up in the ordinance, and maybe it should be, maybe it shouldn't be, but I just want any changes to be in my binder, if that's possible. Next would be Tammy. Did you get my 700 form, and is it okay?
Yes, I did, and yes, you're good.
Okay, thank you. I want to also echo what the previous commissioner said about Mark Velasquez, who I find a real delight. Thank you for being here with the city. When the Kuhlmans came up, I looked at your October 8th email that you summarized all of the work that the staff had done and you had done, and I was going to read it. I just verbatim. I mean, it summarized everything I felt about that project there. So the project went on way too long, and they were there way too long tonight. We should have enforced that 5-minute rule on them because we all read it. It's not like we were going to skip anything. So anyway, thank you, Mr. Velasquez. I appreciate it very much. The Lear project, I know that we're split on it, and that's fine. We have 5 people, and there's difference of opinions, and there should be. You know, I know a lot of times we agree on things, but sometimes we won't. I would point out that one of the reasons I say what I say is because, you know, just the history with the Lears, and I would hope that they improve. I wasn't getting that warm, fuzzy feeling with it. I looked at the project from the street and I thought, you know, yeah, well, that looks okay on the face. And then I looked at what their letter was, and it wasn't suggesting anything permanent. It was, hey, we might do this, we might do that, and that's too loosey-goosey for me. So that really was the reason I couldn't stand behind that project. Sean and Mark. So that was it. Thank you.
Thank you, Kurt. Barbara?
I already talked. Ain't got no more to say. Sean needs a turn.
Well, yeah, he's the next. I got alphabetically backwards. Mine, Sean?
So,
you got 5 minutes.
Speech while I was waiting for Kurt to summarize his comments.
That was 4.5 minutes.
I guess, Kurt, as we've worked together so far on the planning commission, I just want you to know that this is now the second meeting in a row that you've gone against me, and my feelings are starting to get hurt, so I'm taking it personal. But On a more serious note, Mr. Velasquez, I second and third what my fellow commissioner said. It's nice to have you here. I hope you didn't take my comments on attorneys personally. I felt like we were up against the wall, and it's not a really fun position to be in. So I look forward to working with you as long as I'm on the planning commission. And
Same here. Thank you very much. Yeah, that was not an easy one.
Sometimes, I know this is our first meeting with you, but sometimes I have a tendency, not sometimes, all the time, I have a tendency to wear my heart on my sleeve, and I just get really frustrated when people want to do things halfway. I was about to say a bad word, but halfway, and then they don't follow the direction of the city, and then we just want to spend thousands of dollars in attorney fees for simple fact of the matter is, how about being a good neighbor and being a decent human being and figure out what's in the best interest of the city of Escalon as opposed to just doing what you want. So I know the next step is they're gonna go before the city council, and I know city council members watch our meetings on YouTube, and so to the city council members that are watching this, I kindly request that you appreciate the perspective that we were in the situation that we were in. And quite frankly, I think we're all getting pretty frustrated with people trying to go around us and then come back and beg for mercy when it's very apparent that staff definitely has done their due diligence. Staff from Tammy and Dominique and Diana and Justin, city engineer, the entire team, including you, Mr. Velasquez. And it was all for naught. So I appreciate all of your hard work, and only other question is, what's going on with Orlando's?
No update.
Nothing. Yeah, no
Crickets.
update at this time. Yeah.
Okay, last but certainly not least, Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year.
Same to you.
Same to you, Sean.
Okay, Mark?
Wow, I was watching my watch, Sean.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, not a whole lot to add. I just would ask Mr. Velasquez if his comment about that wasn't easy was addressed to the project or to Sean's comment about lawyers.
No, I have a thick skin. I would only ask, come up with some new jokes about lawyers. You got to dig deep to come up with some new jokes. No, not easy, as you guys were presented with a very technical legal question, and you're not lawyers.
Yeah, good stuff. So thank you very much. I think you're going to be a good part of the team here. And thanks to staff. This was not an easy agenda to put together, and it does show. These are there's some of these have some tough questions, and just appreciate the work that goes into it. And it's nice to see that there's some projects in Escalon coming along, and certainly the motorsports one, that's super encouraging that his business is doing so good. Who would have thought that he's sending off trucks to Texas? I mean, what a great story to hear. So Happy New Year, everybody, and there we go. Thank you.
I might keep it less than 5 minutes. First off, Mr. Vasquez, thank you for being here. After reading the minutes, I got lost because I thought, I'm not a law attorney. I don't know what this guy's talking about. So I'm glad you were here. I apologize for the amount of time that I let the Coleman group speak, but I felt that I need to give them some time to vent their their feelings, more so than what they've already done. Next time, and I will keep a 5-minute limit on talking. I'm just glad that things went smoothly. I think we have a great group of people. The staff makes our job much easier because what you do is pretty darn thorough, and it's very easy to follow. I appreciate all the hard work. Most of all, please everybody stay safe and healthy, and we'll see you again at our next meeting. I'm going to adjourn this meeting and go to bed before 12.
Cheers, everybody.
All right. See you guys later. Bye.
Yeah, stay
Bye,
safe,
everybody.
everybody.